Tinasa engagement in the Nahia Empire, the finance minister, no. You can against Semina external. Say important is that the young on Yabiti Sankuta. Now, Yadosu near Mamma Sana, your budget credit. Also, Editum, Cafe, Yansama, you can imagine you call it. Your complaints, your problems, and no one can win now. One more. I appreciate one more because on your engagement and on main was it budget we know supplementary budget and because I didn't put on up time November main budget and on the banner our markup most of our concerns and then you're watching you.
Well, pa mekasi anu atwetwe nkomo empempi ya wonsama wo kan ne se sabia dwadifo muna mudi mudwa ebanyansa nya huma mu nko a muna mu akwan a mofa so di dwaboa ma man so musomu bi ti da bia na wasema a wo kan se foto samso afo no ne mu mehia na okwan kura mbetimi a kire no ama na timi agege to ebeboa me bo oman hu bra no mu betimi aye ne sa ede no hu ye nti a afedi wo se oni mu eba behia yi ana so oni mu hia ndra dai.
Oh, sir, yeah, persistence here, Bichiano, and also no, and when other stakeholders, civil society organizations, and academia, and then it was appropriate to meet with this. And another kind, the state, the true state for us, the culture minister, and said the true state of doing business in the country. The first said, cost of doing business are cost affordable because of the effect of the exchange rate of last quarter of 2022. You get to over 50% of or crime maybe by 50%. And so inflation by interest rates are IMF effect of IMF conditionalities. Introduction of new taxes, a reversal of benchmark value, increase in VAT rates, increase in utility. Utilities, the last 2 quarters have seen utilities now cost for 50%. It will cost any man there. Let's say you need a Biana as businesses, you pay a group, so that's it. Let's say suppressing your growth. You remind minister say woman share woman kasa vision say yeah woman be move a free transition to production now yen say some year taxes here by you bit me produce wo komi ana anything yeah say a kwan bia no a woman be mitigating factors bi beba now a cushion private sector because she made it to say private sector no and the engine of growth. Now no, we are not growing. This year and the year engine in grow. So the economy no and na in grow. And then the anything you created the necessary environment you bit me a grow no and you can't want it. The near can they start by say a true view on my this is more the two say excessive taxation say in human ninety no more day or mobile ban no more say nuisance taxes or we in that family nuisance taxes no at all. What if COVID live here? There also be nuisance. COVID came to it came as a pandemic. If we are suffering any president will be as baby say. Yes, I did to I will live in Ukraine. And into the COVID, in the view there, yet then a table. So we have to take it out of the table. Now, you will in a special import levy beer, special import levy beer, yetia. But also, abandoned and the device after the sunset. Now, over year 4%, you will have some 20 or more edits out to no banner a year year for also a bear watch bidding abeta in comb. Ye cut any years and a 2 million quadruple for and when we are was na VAT a trono so a cost and also a more Emma Unimedian so and also VAT no and say a restructure VAT system. na intimi ensure compliance na emfa prepare yo emre edwedi na ye na to tell the truth etona abroad na ama aka businesses ashe ama yenye competitive in the neighboring countries. Seriously, they are not competitive at all. But you could say manufacturing company, you know, saying good idea, exercise, and say, you must see and also made in Ghana, goods in the you patronize the factories, money, and or monobuy. But why you call one oil. Wasn't it, you know, and now cost of doing business in Tino, when Timinton, what the for a year, what the same factory need to go, one would be a moment a bahawa. Now, one first say you need West Africa, Jet, you know, if I would see in your man, the Mokotadi or Togo or Mokotogo. I didn't think I near my ye cry, a buy your man, ye cry, your clan, your macho, Togo. Now, Yema, we will say free opportunity, your preference. Let's say one more cost of doing business, and one more, you know, I will form any idea also into a more equal to flu. That's a woman and ye. The passa, that's a limited forest, now, yeah, because you forest reserve and you know, foreign exchange in India. And then the Sansa and the Aqua neighboring countries I could try there. That's a wood track at a matter to real. Now, me and Nebia. What the bono APS on a Numa, a 10 Numa shot. There is a buy and so obey turn up a bill. Na yet me a steady task. They are a 23 and so a young crew one crew. So they are a dear your friend compliance and they are assured. The compliance no why and the more natural. So maybe I am a task to GDP and the sub region. Yet a year least to cry, yet the chakra. Other neighboring countries and women are attached to GDP associated there. Yes, I'm saying a transport ministry, a committee, a fat funding mission share cost of doing business. That year was so far. Your ports no won't count. That year no so far. It is a near man of course no passes no endorse one. It doesn't ensure compliance. And into a modern is sending to a more modern and a compliance no was so. And they are attaining high tax of to GDP no higher because of the compliance. It is a not compliance and non-cost. I mean, now I was here because a travel cost was a month for every term. They said ye live by your quiet and boarding thing. So be a use telephone. It will be a use young son. Well, yeah, a quite be a buffer to be a wound here until was the Enya scanners in Kenya. There's only a year no Kakrabi and Nippon Chiakra Wunwa. Because will be a year that as the color boom come are buying and for Jessica. And into the say, you let me sustain stability now, Katrana again. And when I enter buying, so the concentration was a was a city, a stabilized Katra. But I say, yeah, entrenched stability, and as a stability, back a credit for 2 months, 3 months, now for a circle. So, yeah, it means that stability now, it means as you said, quiet. Monetary policy rate no better form about interest because interest no quite as a component of cost and no number inflation because interest you try about 35% into a compound the cost of doing business. Inflation a war on my gun and as a result of excess liquidity in the system, and as a result of accumulation of cost. I don't know, say, we share taxes here, but here, so we got a money, we any electricity bill, anyone you can. No, some of them are pay prices, so some like a month or a cost, anything you want inflation. And yet, Bank of Ghana strategy say, may you put up excess liquidity. And into that, about 8 to 9 times, or my yes, exercise, and so you who's and so because almost 2 monetary policy rate now compound problem now as I add no cost for you could do 53 and say now about 42%. And it see to me yes I say now you promote down cost of doing business now. And they say a crime ebide ama edwedie tumpon mfidijuma tumpon ama akwayon so tumpon na enoban so ayefo ama komafo so etimi atobi enyo omamo de no mofamu de
eja ma yenhwe free November 2002 ya for some for den semu ekotu dwa no waka se wo hwese de be ya ye be free taxation to production free sabre no be sise ne we are satisfied with the process any said your mo ye said de be ya ye be free taxation to production
no someone me tell be say no am water yenya sabe no na ye bo eto no e so na be ya say Promise say you better kwabra no na akache a lot more people no one more empo and more capacity no to grow one more empo one more capacity to produce so we get be a new market here na ya produce to set one more production no one more me to no popi one so e ka one more she it be the what me free taxation na production until there it hasn't been achieved and they are aware
Wayapa Ura Joseph Kwaku Obinso ya nkomui na chese no ade yo eti ya besa akọ Dr. Joseph Kwaku Obin eho na fi watimi aboaye ama yatimi atensem na se eyem yehu sanse no ade finance minister Ken Oforiata ebra when the stakeholders meeting here course or Ministry of Finance no na papa edimo akotimbi okobi enti wono na obetimi akire mu enema potin womo ensamo a womo adeto opanyin na anim ene de aban position de aban betimi aye de aboase de beya adwadie ho ensem betimi akoso kai se wono na oba guta ekuo womo a ekra neoma de efri amanone yebeka se adwatonfo womo eton neoma ewo mamu no ekuo kase ya wono mo ewo mamu no ya friends guta obrofo gasa mu no ene panyi kwankyerefo a woda no ese president na yene no edi enkomo no nti yebesa anya ne bi ni atoaso na waboa yen amyehu ensem no nani so ne afenzo nsempoti isanse ne nkomodie mu no o kire ense opanyi ni se sabre de ode kwedie yae budget na wie nti nyafe na o kase okuyi atuo bi de free baabi isanse mpanyifo dodo na kire se be yi a ankasa COVID-19 levy ya chese eda enioma boso ya no nso yeto foforo a womo ede bae bra na oye presentation of the 2023 budget no kebe yi ayiye no mfiri ho na ebebo apa ma aviadifo ye komwatimi ahan kakra nanso no panyini se ebe din se nimanimu ya de obeye nti wonye ne saa no ene nhyehyɛ ebe no de gu akwamu a ebebo ama aviadifo nso womo kombetimi ahan ha womo ama enioma akosuo eyi yenya no biemu a yane no bewura anumu na fi watimi aboa na kwame o kan hyehyɛ ya aban kan so wode ebeba nti ma yehwe bobo so ma ne hwese de tie
na me bobo eye 1D 1F no so ne de almost miwie ye enti ma menhwe enema bi etese landing site a waka se eno nso no obeye ho adwuma ewo mpoano ewo miaye ahodo ewo omanmu waka se obeye edumienu 12 na obeye ede aboa se de ebeya na nanom aposofo nso no omadwuma omoye ene se nam omo ekoyie no enseye mbetumi enye baabi ede agu na se de wobo ho amane ni enti se me bokuro ni din na se wo ho baabi a na watimi ahwe se eyampa se umantamu de no enei aban no atimi aye ede ama wana se eyehwebuada de edikan no waka se wobeye bi ewo axim ene disc of ewo western region axim any disc of eno ewo western region ho oka se obeye mienu nti ba ko bewo axim ba ko ebewo disc of eno ewo ho ena afensu so oba central regional ho na obeye dodo pa obeye ba ko ewo mori ebi ebewo mfantiman ebi bewo ekumfi ebi ebewo manford ebi bewo winiba ebi bewo senyabreku ena afi gomwa fete ho so ene nkura hodo a wobobo so ewo budget no mu se womo ebesi sa landing site no ede ama fisher folks na womo ewo ho no ena afi uwramu eba enkran ha wobo baabi etise teshi osu ena afi Jamestown ho so ene nkuto ahodo a owura oforiata ebo so ewo budget no mu se ombesisi sa emiaye bi ede ama nananom aposofo se de be ombenya baabi na womo ede enama hodo ede asie nti se wo sa nkuto iso a na wahwe se onam no ukoba yesi ya onya baabi edigu saa so na ukọ voter regional wode etuga echese obesi baako ewo keta onso so no obesi bi ewo nti ofa eno so eye enema ahodo ananka oye ede aboa se de be ya omanfo no asetena mu no enema ebetumi ayemre ni titiriu we no eye aposofo no wo mo enso ede eno no.
Right, kwame ma ye na wasinti wani guso ya wo show Onua TV wo sanso ati live on Onua 95.1 FM we media budget review ya finance minister Ken Oforiatta de eco parliament na fe wo de akoto edwa eyoman no yakoma bosika ye ode tudwa mfiempimie no ene aduonu mienu November ne de toso aduonu enan ewoman mra hyebedwa mu na okonu akobu akonta ahwese besisa bre ya yache afinimu no sen na akomabo no eko edefa sen no mani sikasem no ne ntotoye asienti eye empensempensemu enwuma se ebia hu behia so unya sika bi edeka ho a na acheso atimi aye ne sa senso sese ebia wotimi tete enioma bi so se ebia aban expenditure na eso otimi etete ebi so eboa me yi sika ni bi de kwache ba bia na achesense hye aban eye de aboa se ebitimi de atwa afe no awie ma yede akomabo sika foforo ede aba na ho nkomodie ene ade ekoso nti opanyiji mama mema so na ezase ani owura kwaku oben atwetwe nkomo nti ne yemfam free de eye adwadifo point of view yemfam free honom so hwe 2023 ya yewomu budget statement ya finance minister ede ekoye na ose Ghana Care eye obatampa project na chese no yenhyehyɛ ya omode eba ya import enioma hodo a yekra edifra mano ne eba no womo asese base over $10 billion na afibia no yekra enioma yekra bibiti se anwa bibiti se asichire ofa emo ene pharmaceutical product ahodo ya yekra de eba nti ma yehwe se ya cha afi mu no mo de mo na mundi mani edi sikasem na chi hwe ehon hye ne tesai o hwe aban no odi ne kwan mu se wo twa so na yanka say it because o project say o hwe o man mu a production anye ye kura best 45% dey bit me produce o man mu e wo si call dey akosa manufacturing sector na it meboa ne o masa no
yo na mamenda say ye fefi bibia ora Joseph Sian EDC na ye Guta president I say my two key stakeholders Guta for any AGI Guta for Agina Homa Ghana Union Traders Association and AGI for Association of Ghana Industries e mu fa no ye wona omokra nyoma edeba omanimo and AGI for no so eye omo a omo ye manufacturing yakase bibia ye hwe edwedi nsensem na eye two leg anase afana mienu de yemianom a omo kra enyoma no versus companies anase industries individuals omo no ewo factories manufacturing ewo omanimo a enyoma ye consume ana oka ho asem no omo betimi akọ into production in the 2023 budget no yenya ntie say ye import bill eye enyoma ye credible omanimo afibia na e cost government $10 billion import enyoma ye cra edeba omanimo enti on average no ye month by month we are doing just a little below $1 billion annually on import enyoma ye consuming so a ebia sabi ye betimi aye wo omanimo ha kese pa ne ye rice production nyanum say ye di amopa wo omanimo emo a ye di ewo omanimo so no dodo na ye di ye krafia brochiba foreign rice ye local rice participation very low ye share fruit juice anwa vegetable oils any cooking oils ahodo bebre na your factories ni bia omoye bi ewo omanimo de badodo na no ye di fiabrochire na eba ceramic tiles ye de building usi dan usi ufie na person otumu tiles and also ye cra de ba omanimo ye nyina nim say there were a lot of clay deposits in the country tiles no clay near there ye betimi a manufacture ewo omanimo nti ye bobo sa enyoma kakanka krai so and at least there 40% of $10 billion in the gebetimi access so aye wo omanimo and no na a minister ehwehwe ni but say no with the media review no send na ora oben eka no minister eka say enye enyoma ni nyina na ometimi ayeden achieve because enyoma ni bebre we media review nti ekwan emba ho ema submissions and say enyoma hodo mbeso mo de to minister nyim no omo benya kwan e de aye eti say ni ye share 2023 budget minister de buy na the objective and ye betimi de atoto ho number 1 minister say obe mobilize revenue brofumu no aggressively mobilize domestic revenue say ye betimi ajeje elto no dodo na wo man mu mobilization e bi say ye de to for beba e bi say elto dada na increase compliance say ora oben e kanu. Number 2 years streamline and then rationalize expenditure. Yenina yeni mafie twemu Ghana for do na na ka say aban no complaining about ikasema eni honomo the increasing budget deficit intino adding na aban and downsize the government on review some of the flagship policies. That was one of the objectives for 2023 budget. Yebe hwe ni mu say no minister na aban no etimi achieve. Another objective here to boost local production. Na yen komo ne ye ba no. Say ankrankra ye wo man ni mu no enyoma ye credible ba ni mu ne betimi a produce dodo na anyanye kwa no 40% e wo man ni mu e won sunsu anso bebre e bebo economy no ye cedi any dollar ho ade bia na e kuntokwa na dollar na e bru cedi no. One of the key indicator and it is coming as a result of that side. And he say aban e hwe nim say obe boost local production and the afino emu ache aban no etimi ayesa dwumedie na ade ba kon so ye to promote and diversify export yakase si yetimi industrialize economy ni wia ye focus ni se nyoma na yetimi ye consume ye behia ye bedi ni edi wia de ebeka no ni export ni yetimi enya foreign exchange eno eboama ye economy no stabilize. These are the key objectives for the 2023 budget. Inti enumu no proud to announce before aban ne kra beko IMF no na aban no the policy bi a obo so e fe no obatampa Ghana Cares program bi e buy aban no launch about 100 billion Ghana cedis 100 billion Ghana cedis no nanka eno na baba beboa aban no free covid issue so e dey buy economy ni mo nti aban to ni din say PCPEG a post COVID-19 program for economic recovery and I say economic growth. Emunu ni na ban launches asika kesiye ya 100 billion na aban de be augment most of your sectors no. Ghana Care Obatampa project no. Eno na e say etimi ebo aban no or subsidize basic cost of services insuo kania bo aban etia subsidize kakrama timemufo again food security once the covid dey buy no na yentimi enko emba ema market bibia yetutumu etino esen ye be ye kwan ben so ne ye be fa so etimi egro induane a yedi ebi ne ye se fertilizer ahodo a ye credible omani mede makuafo no aban ne the program bi be ba ye be hu factories bi o metimi a produce fertilizer no na yetimi die bia njuma ma ya Ghana for their supply farmers no na again in sunu input seedlings a be boa because share food security e was yetimi ye home grown e was ye dua endobaya ne wo ye man ni mu a ye ne enkoka se ye kra tomato efi Burkina uko tomato es na vrongo de ye ni nyina ye kofa fi Burkina ne de aba o man ni mu e ba ne sana embo adwedie e wo ye man ni mu again in sunu so as part of the Ghana Care Obatampa project no was to support businesses and then workers on say ya can time and time again say I was say the form wo man ni mu no ease of doing business bro for casen say omo ho be han wo mo adwedie nsense mu e be access to capital say omo benya akonya etimidia akobo besian kakra e de ahye omo ndwumanim no my productive no metimi di adandan omo adwuma nim ti aye focusing more on small medium sectors and as enterprises no because a honey na the engine of growth and yet the bigger organization but ankronkron dwe ekoso o man nim kakanga kra it as part of the Ghana Care Obatampa project no na sika bi wo hono ma aban ni twa se anye kwa no 2 billion Ghana cedis bi esike bi a aban ne de betu obetimi de cushion individuals any businesses again any dasu hu kese ba ko ma aban ye health sector because the covid the buy no a lot of pressure beto your health facilities no you go into face mask production ne detergents ne nyoma ahodo bebre na your health sector no pressure was so ye pant ni so ade hu kese ba ko a aban ne de buy say obey agenda 111 anka mansini bia benya at least to a district hospital and it is say media review no you expect say sa particular policy no etimi aba aye hu say mansin bia no he na we do and again ye aban no so ye say obey pass certain tax legislation bia ebe boa edwedie bi the tax exemption yaka say o share ye various tax laws e wo manimu a ye wo concessions and as tax exemptions ahodo bebre are preventing individuals from not paying taxes or call the indirect taxes so they are certain supply of goods and services bia so udi hu ejedia e hono charge VAT and fanto so e ma the final consumer ntia ba ne sa ne pe eliminate the tax contribution and I say the revenue generation into expert for ahodo ni bebre na kasa say aba empase tax exemptions na ontimi harmonize all the exemption frameworks in our tax laws eno ye ken aba no so etimi e de sa emra na ye den aba bedi that is the Ghana Care Obatampa project no and isa nyoma nyina no in the media no at least you expect minister say obetimi emaye mu pensem but key what this media review ne there and ana ye call yemra finance minister the Public Financial Management Act 2016 section 28 a minister say not later than 31st July and then 31st July until within time framework in the minister onye late here yenya last week ekra na nanka say odeba which is good because na say nka wetimi aye more efficient but as it stands now no the minister is still efficient when it comes to the presentation of the media na 31st into a meeting that requirement in the media review na Imran say obama an overview of our macroeconomic indicators and ekwaya economy no etimi enyini growth rate in our GDP and as economy ni yehu say businesses bebre ababeke ka ho ana as it stands now no the value of economy no ejina over 802 billion Ghana cedis. The economy Ghana economy the ehunbo etoto so ayekeka enyoma ye produce goods services ye hu wo ye man ye market ni na ye quantify ni na over a particular time no e man that sika puduo no 802 billion enti o economy a ejina ne na so say sika kesiese na wo economy ni ma it stands to reason say so etimi mobilize revenue out of it and na oro benka say ye share ye tax to GDP ratio sub-Saharan African countries na countries a WhatsApp of the Sahara ni na Ghana we are doing very low. First nation at 13%. And we are 13% on the 802 billion. Now you see where we fall. A person etimi epj muko anko krabe 18% to 20%. Or the ambitious is that at least you are doing about 20 to 30% of your GDP. And the ebema sika bi bre aboma. But see e kasa ne the revenue no ye den e wo fam. That is one of the key indicator. One of the key indicator near inflation. Okay. And the inflation, economy, so it's one of the macroeconomic indicators. I be expect minister. Equire on my fast so etimi addressing inflation. Ye koya ko nenima ko do 54.1 and na eso take a crab as it stands na ne musam pejae as at current we say reporter statistical service at the buyer could na 42 no eti ehun susu aso ho no mo ye hwe ni mu say ekwan minister at the be address end of the year no because afie etwemu 2021 2022 just about 2021 inflation is 7%. It's how inflation has traveled from 7% to current 42 no is a lot of things that are say to me ebusa minister na ye hwe ne san so the minister so ebe mayen the budgeted revenue because 2023 or the figure be by say revenue I'm a person minya wa afie we mu no 143 billion Ghana cedis. That was the target. Budget bian so eni so ade hu enye actual figure. Enti no anto say ye be call economy no manase ye be call afinimu afi bia ni ehu revenue akru ni akani ni na abom ni ehu sika sen na aban na timi raise as a result of what budget revenue na no na my actual revenue. Enti as we speak in the mid-year no minister ebetimi aka kire yen sika onyaye from fiscal year 2022 which is January to December 2022 won't say as at the time of the budget presentation 2023 budget no AC was September. It is September near October, November, 3 months into year figures no. But the CIATMI travel into the mid-year of 2023 no. So remaining 3 months neba be kahon. But as at period end September no, revenue figure minister Koti say in terms of actual revenue is 65 billion. And a GRA for the report by say they've exceeded that target to 75.5 billion. It is say no revenue no October, November, December there by and no ba kwa kahon. Yeah, plus and minus are all things being equal. You can say, okay, 2022 minister in 100 billion Ghana cedis. That is actual revenue. Then that is just by way of what analysis. It is a say no bit me actual revenue, actual revenue for the fiscal year ended 2022. Now, for the target or projected for 2023, which is 143 billion, saying away, out of the 143, no. All things being equal, divided by 2, and I say half of krana. Minister etimi enya in excess of some 52 and I say 54 billion Ghana cedis a year kasa sisia. Oka say the expenditure so here 205 billion Ghana cedis. Akohuma sika no. Sika pa we try to also be expending in terms of expenditure. 205 billion. 205 billion no. Oti revenue of 143. Every 205 now it's at the deficit are brain of some 61 billion. It's a budget deficit for 2023 61 billion deficit near a car a dahonomo sa 61 billion they be ameka say e kwan mienu so na ban ne befa so e de afinance and it's a deficit ne ba e bone de na mom no as material time bia we are expecting a lower budget deficit but a deficit ne ba e was a minister pe kwan bi so de be finance e kwan ne mienu so ankobo be sin or the taxes beba. Okay, that's very simple. And 2023 you hu eto ahodo a minister here den e introduce here abinu peja VAT move from 15 the existing 15% na ho no and or the 2.5 here den ebe kan so from 12.5 and ababi gina 15% say e-levy na ejina 1.5% and abinu nso reduce by 1%. This were the two revenue measures abinded by say in anticipation so betimi enya that 143 billion nana. As at the time no and a parliament echo recess it the other revenue bills no minister intimi anya den pass ye January no and or submitted those bills in here den echo parliament because na minister announced that say ye baba be call IMF in the IMF near 3 billion ababe share economy no near year debt restructuring where economy domestic debt and then foreign debt no I was said that revenue bills no yetimi den pass in the anticipation of the approval from the IMF into bill be a buy a friend of growth and sustainability levy they say ababa be ye embra abino so sakra income tax e wo no mo epeja e mukakra introduce additional bracket of 35% and na abino targeted the higher net worth individuals someone said omusika ne ye den ewo soro esikafo o man aban ne beji kakra if you omonom ene yehu excise duty ana ye roben mu nso ye den e ka ho asem ye no so e baaye no and it's our 3 revenues in addition with say abani peja VAT from 12.5% to 15% no I was a minister MIN report update on how much has accrued to government in terms of all this tax type abani ye den e de baaye.
Okay. Mr. Jima and what the Kano or financial policy analyst and officer tax experts and you know and community or my new who be brave. Key points are as you to me award the 2023 budget in the morning and the area anymore say finance minister eco parliament or they ever quack to yedim na yahwe kaise ye do beko na fe mia baby a deep jadu draw na no yedo akọ isanze akachro se sabre baby ade ani ebesi pa any social policies aban no ede eba ye ne mfaso a Ghana for atimi enye isanze ye kan nyina no COVID-19 ne ba na manipa bebre adwuma bebo mo obi wo ho no ma bi wo ho ana wo pamade ne store agu oni sika de koye biu aban policies na de ba no senate ye behwe national health insurance scheme no aban de ba mfaso ben na de ema omanfo aban ka se de you start adwumadie bia no so de beboa mabu omuni adwuma eye no ni nyina no watimi aye anase ho nsem no sen na tenti ye bekom na yetimi na ma memfa we MP so manafe kwa memram bi and say de ye kan nyina no pagini se kwache na ho ade fa sika no de ye eti ye kan nyina no dodo na gina de aban ne betimi ajeje wo se Ghana for dem pempi no de na aban ya ma de na aban ya ma de by sign na aban na eba ne futuo mu en wetimi ajeje wo hwe revenue anase to kan so obejeje no na sabre ya cha ban afi mu a aban ne nam kwan so ye obetimi aduro ne botaye ho
Nana no kreni ekwan aban nam so de nka eye ekwan papa but on say eto no so de ultimi e will be on that's right that's much of a better word sikanu will be on etibetimi de hihye ni nyina ka oh police we beye we but onipa kono we ntimi voluntarily amfa sikana ambrewa ultimi nyesa o policies na o kan fantastic aban can you start ya can the teaming unemployed graduates away man the youth no yenwanu be brave school sebe ejuma peno ayedine e de ama omo enti aban ne de sa policy by nya is in line with the Ghana Care Obatampa project because cover the buy no 3 weeks or the maximum 1 month lockdown no yeni na ehu the heater e de bre e dedie economy bia nso ngina so nyina ye edwedie eni se edwedie no enko yi a ehọ na obenya woto ehọ na obia benya sika kakra ehọ na ebetimi a create njuma na e create more factories na yetimi ayeden e dey build the economy no ehọ na obetimi dey achieve your macroeconomic indicators o share with inflation when there is an addition of companies and as jobs our GDP no be grow because GDP is all about say ye bi enjuma ye fa mbegunu enjuma ye produce bibi o man mu until you open up your economy it you know fantastic policy you started by senka buy ne be my youth no access to capital na so be twa sika bi dia to no mo na mbegunu asebe omowo a business idea be then we promote entrepreneurship but as it stands now sikano semne yeden e wo feminti na binding timi yeden e achieve that particular policy in its fullness. The other ones are na social policy be na abai no e kan wo 2023 budget no say 1D1F after using yes Kwame kan wasem automobile industries no organic fertilizer because in the heat of Russia-Ukraine war, you can say, oh, and Ukraine for Russia for mu produce fertilizer into no affecting input no farmers no are disrupting global supply chains. What has government done in that particular regard? Because you say Ghana no, agriculture, country. It's ebanesa na yentimi na say they be na fertilizer no, ye be crayfish brochi aba na yenye bia na ye ne den nti no aban ka so be promote say ye betimi establish fertilizer yetimi ehu fertilizer plant bi mpo e wo man ni mu ana say effort in subsidizing fertilizer ma ededifo no sorry for your farmers no e bi mpo den abana eti all this policy together with one key social intervention a friend no leap social protection policy no esi ye nua no mo ye maame no mo efi ohia buburu mu wo man ni mu with support of sika ni na ye cash because abani can say remit certain monies to them na review the current rate wo ho no ma page mu because inflation na cost of living no cry then cost and he say obi 50 cedis say every day dia no rely on na also timi den page mu edema wona omowo the poverty line no enti all these social interventions ne there enke kwan ne there enke ye idea nimpo intent and purpose nimpo there but senior kind say kwacha there fani na ye sike ya and say sika na mba abaini ntimi nye den achieve all these fantastic policies no abaini de ko IMF no nyame ncha de ababeboa bibrika nye dia ne nka eyini na enim se ne economy
ya beba ho ne ababehe emoa sonko asa IMF no de abaye kaw se finance minister started the presentation no parliament pa ibetwatum na yakọ na fe watie bi yetie wi a na yehunu se de ebe no de afakwame
na yanko twetwe nkomo ewo zoom no so san say yenua bema nhiraba buadu aye krado ewo aboso kan ewo enkran ha yanko hwe ye ka ne say nyina no adwadifo wo mo etonton ka ho mpemprade ene ade no aboso kan ena wodi wo dwa yanko na ye ne nhiraba buadu entwetwe nkomo mfiri aboso kan inshi ma ha
baba maje osuewie
aha yanhwe na ansa na Ghana fotosamfo wade media budget review ehon se betudwa ewo emrahye bedwafie no aboso kanfo ya eduba bi a wo mo etiamu se koba se ye ready budget ewo mamu a sen na wo nso ede etudwa ehwe animu se oroforiata ene wade betudwa wo emrahye bedwafie
baba mame na asena memma ahwefo nyina akwa babie mu emfemra Onua TV ndim se nei Iraq no foriata wo kogina simpeni a personal budget review eja wade ni nyina abana wo hwe Chia say na uhwe background no utimi ehunu babia megina ene ye oba nkran bubuni mantima babia spare parts che say eho na nadwesuo nyina ewo no eho ena che say ewie yi Brena o ha say no omo ehwe ni mo say anka ene budget no omo so omo de betimi abam na say de niam abo ekosoro no anka nyame ayadoma etimi aba fom kakra no ne ade a omo ehwe ni mo say so omo de dwade a omo die no den de nyina kwantuo ye piama ni Your new executive aboso kan ha say we for mene no eba be din komo na ya hwe wo mo on the head of communication na ya hwe na o expectation pa for adarma mame emo
inshi ya na wagina yie kakra ama ye san se network no Ghana ni mu nse
mami chia wa hwepo nya within the 30 hours I will be running na head of communication yes patient there import duty tax net that as poverty recovery covenant levy or not expect any other levies any tax that from say buying say media budget burden be be so because media budget be am say budget is can the man on so be one point be a was spend up do be a ya could do it no or national levy tax you or hana one na be free one on expect covenant recovery tax that levies na say be now what fair customs amendment act no o share 35% bi na ewo mu na e ba be say dwedie mu especially o me ye fi ho policy ni dey we okay but half 35% no anything e ho no yes but say and then no because you are no more interested me ye fi ho na dwedie sponsor one dey one ha o no o share sa exchange rate no our dollar no maybe even though 11.5 yes still no e bi wo because o share is on we south dwedie now so purchasing power no awon dey dwedie to ade e bi ni ho because carrying new system ni it may have said no conventional wine or address issue number 24 so I said negative consider from wine on kaka they expect more but as we said no yeah budget number ni bi so on be so mu some tax be farm mo de ka ho a be say ba digest issue na kasa because na enwe ko di otna na bi ba kusie
enti dia wo kan nyina start tax ahodo ana mo pese wo mo eyi free ehon mo na fe mo ho to mo no se ba se bia yemfa nka asem hwe se ba se akenkan no eba mu na mu susu ya na te dia mo hwe no entimi amamu a mo obi bia mo be ka hwe mpanyifo
yes no ya so from because now no because of say I think say November I said $600 million no air COVID-19 no second tranche na say ba but so we meeting the target now a bad thing say obeti my the tax maybe I don't know when you tax no because also we meeting the target so that's it because I'm a sponsor expect to meet the target no meeting the second tranche na there because we share some upfront charges on abanja report na onu kwa dey come beautiful so ya wo just ke bia to answer na we do to no kwakutu ya upfront charges no a wrong decision they expect say omo di anya hwiamfa na kan yi na omo di tax for the kan wa ye ko so de omo te yanka so I say ye ni we work with the politicians, we work with the government of the day and any political party we have the government of the day ni na ye ni ye adwuma papa e be ka boni e be ka but se ba mama anya hwiamfa na omo di tax now e be hit them hard. We hit them hard.
Eti wo fawada ma eti se dia penyina wono no odan kitawde bo fotra no wo aboso kan ha sei no wono na yene no atwetwe enkomo nti se dia wo hwa dom ne bebre na wo bia nyuma so ye ne kakra nti ye be wa tweye mu akuti se ye be kenkan bibia bewie enti se ba se ye kenkan bibia ewia ye be sibia no so ye ne wo mo besan asim nyana yakwe ese nia na wo mo hwe ni mu no so ni nyina ebe mu na amamu so ade hene de hene na wo beka ho asem enti yeguso a watwe mu a wo hwe aboso kan ne de ase nyuma bre na eguso a ene ye bon kontri ye koni enkonkotie se eba se de wo makan eba mu a ehu emu a bia no fa ye de bebre ahwefo ne etiefo
Inshaba ya da sinti wo de kwasoa na bo ehonom ema ye sanse ebrepam no ye besan ababiem na yato ankomotwetwe no so wa bra ye nyina ye watwen ye mu ehwe se owura kuntum kurunku oforiata obekwa akopie mu ewo emrahye bedwafie na wode ne nsem akotudwa ye da sipi ye yenua bema inshaba buadu ena wode amaneboy efri aboso kan ede abesom ye ni entina chese aboso kan fo nso no ewo expectations bia wonom ehwe se ene ebetumi atofem ewo eye media budget review no emu na ofa ye nkrofukuro ya na 2017 first ever budget awura ofuriata kan ye wonom eto santene efri ahofufuo ekobo omo nsem ma no se abolishment of some taxes bia na omofre no nuisance taxes nkrofukuro ya nene o masanso ekamu nti yenhwe ebre ne nkrabia na be kire se de opani ne kan no we se omo de omo ne amanyofo no ene ye adwuma abanya awote so no wo ye na ya ombeka wo ye na nyenso a ombetwa wachi nti yenhwe na oroforiata ewie ne dwumadie na afei yahwe se de ombeka atoaso
kwame akuya rampaba from parliament nti ne ntoaso
Oh, okay. Yanko Parliament na kuya mensa abrampa ewo honom na yento aso emfiri ho. Na kuya ma he.
Yo mejo so kwame.
Na emrahye bedwafie sesei eho etesen owura oforiata wabeduru na omeduru yenso a ede na ekoso ewo Parliament osisi yi. Nana wadaroma chi aho kakra ma me na em se network no nheda enimu ayensa.
Okay, mama enchange na me fi baby am.
Eye se dey ase wo dem ti ma
say finance minister ora Ken Oforiata oba ha ora parliament enche bia be 15 minutes ago no ora ha say oni deputy finance.
What menka?
Kwame.
Sa woti menka wadaroma ofon no fato auto rotate ma ye se de be ya ebetumi adane ye ma ye hu ye ewo zoom no so wadaroma.
Okay.
Na afi ye nto aso.
Okay, Kwame. Yes. Minim say yeah.
Se say de ye nanka wo chia no ekọ tenten mu e ma me a se wo de agina ho tentene. Enti na kwa de ma yentie o se orofori ata bidu ana yenhwe de ekoso wo mrahye bedefie o.
You comment, it's an amateur, me say, Oremo Enche, be about 15 minutes ago. Now, only Deputy Finance Minister, Meme Remo, put on a bag, color green. It's a suitcase, green, I just said, Ukraine, or Babe, my media budget, no, 50 January, Kusi Junior, Koso, Cheshire, Koso, Ewo, or mining Mona. If it has any name, say a certain Ebesha and National, there may be a Koso, involving. Members of Parliament and community and delay Kakrabi Sisiana proceedings. The Speaker of Parliament Atna Nakunyamua, members of Parliament in ABB books in church mistake errors. Ansana sitting no as a finance minister Ababe Kasara. Ukraine Ghana for a share say then for na finance minister Ababe Kam Efa Nishaya. Fiti last year, ABC this year. Now, we the first time the finance minister Nebabe Kasa after inya 3 billion bailout from IMF, and then the first time Obabe more official statement senior Kanaka Kusi senior ibe second tranche because the first tranche needed that. We still be a finance minister and the 2023 budget. But it's more senior mobile stabilize the economy stabilize senior growth or mining and social protection human being on my more money here for me then on my and I then IMF no so and they are told say when you were budget nim ye diso. Na den ye hwe ni mu so say ebema onyi eni asomdwe aba o man we ni niam bebra ye hwe ni say finance minister na ebetu ye ni ewiawe na eche no ye ne economic analyst bi na business community na kasa na members of parliament bi akasa e woni o mu hwe ni say finance minister na ebetu ye ni ewiawe na do na kasa more expected taxes, you may introduce any new taxes. Now, no more sharing, say you pay taxes in April. Taxes it is a COVID levy, no more sharing, say you pay taxes in e-levy, no. Then a government obey if you now another but or more expected to say the new taxes be when the people now sharing say the finance minister and the people to your now. Information minister could job on Kuma and so akasa afa budgeting who now say at the back one you be showing in Myanmar issues here if the challenges I have with economy from last year to now lessons being and issue near patch the mean chichi but me sure said your patch and finance minister and any power or chichi mama ain't no winning near my and say finance minister in the debate in 1 o'clock. I see on proceedings air to minimum say MP right to force in the general floor of the house or address house into me show some movie or more proceedings now not mama Akwenya ama finance minister ababe kasa ache Ghana for efa media budget review kwame
nana ma mena se na ya fawnsi anti ye wie presentation ni bibia ye bese aba na ya behwe de edom kuma no ene dom dodo ni nyina no wo mo eka e de afa presentation no ho ewo emrahye bedwafio ye da asipi
kwame
we ye nuaba nana akua mensa abrampa ena wato yenkra e de afri emrahye bedwafie no nti na chese nya asem ketoa wo mafri ase emrahye bedwafo atena cd eni eda kwan se enkakran no ye betimi adu ho na wato nsa e de afre wo man foto samfo raka no foriata na wode nsem akoto dwa na afi eno akiri no wo mahu se de ombesi aka ho nsem e de afanti no brepam no wo representation ni nyina e besi akona na akua ho biem na ye ne no atwetwe nkomo ekoba ne sei a edom kuma no e wode beka afa ho edom dodo no so e wode beka afa ho ntie ba na yakwaje afanu ni mienu nyina no obia ensema wode etudwa e de fa media budget presentation no ho Onua TV na Onua 95.1 FM eno asugua utie
right nti Mr. Jima ma ye nsam na aso bi ne ye o se o hwa consensus dodo na accord ya masa covid 1911 no ase hunsam no ya de a oko business community na da o man no mo ka uti report free parliament by nyina ya de o mo ka so ma enhwe yenkum ne enhwe covid 19 levy a finance minister the call parliament the last budget presentation the course sen Sena affect business. Yanti year. Ebema man for one he ha on.
You nana mamenda was bium. Let me say the focus and the discussion on this 2023 media review, you know, it's all about COVID-19 level. Internal Business Committee, you know, or my very way about it, you know. Impact in the nana sonkakra because we share COVID now levy nearby, you know, at that goods and services so levy need that goods and services so levy no already auto eduane and as auto be product be and as all render services be our minimum and we have different industries services hotel industry transportation industry entertainment industry health side one sanitation or more companies somewhere accessible they mine into industries na will be brave pharmaceutical industry be brave services are ye render now home also VAT edaso
yeah
can say VAT no say crown before na 12.5% last this year 2023 no aban page mu e 2.5 then ebe kan ho now about 15 COVID-19 levy, no, so yeah, levy a in the tax law VAT Act in your friend of value of taxable supply, and the value of taxable supply, no, say ye say all supply products be and our services be so have value.
No, fan say be may surprise have phone the amount,
right?
Me cover buy no, yeah the levy be to so a meet a tax be that so a meet and now, what I say, you do COVID-19 na babeka ho. Nti ema phone yi ne bo na ma ne yedin. Okwan ben so na ha me a, me so me kofa di free China de eba no. Say de be ya hwefo no betimi ate. Nyenti amanfo su dodo na access ade no. Ye isa COVID-19 living in free ho no.
That is a fa phone ni e de ye example and I say if normal bottle water ye to normal. On the phone cost no say 1,000 cedis and only the cost. Your fellow X factory cost and I say exclusive cost. And no, a two beyond that so. Was the businesses costing share raw material, no the labor account, no the overheads account, no mania total and also prime cost. So cost no mania no the margin and markup to be
you know say yenti o manfo no na sanchichiri me yempo so ahanti ye besan ba ho na wasan to azunti makwa memfo enkokuma asem na ne nkoti o monzo so omonzo san de asem na beba na ye hurisa de tie kwa me
Yanko asante pantemu ahenkro kumase na yene Kwame Bafo ajekum yene no enkotwetwen enkomo wono nso adwan ne ewo zoom no so na ye hwede amanfo mo nso ewo kumase eka Kwame ma he
ejoso ofa
na wugina he poten ewo kumase abonten so awie yi
ebepre dia me wo ye tech edwam na me kasa free
wo manfo no se dan dia no mo hwe anim e dia fa media budget presentation ni ehun
yo bebe ma be do there me titro adawa for ene o hasi am pese me no mo twetwen komo ye pa se nya me boa wo kina e kono pango ye betutu me page na bo na koso ye hwe eye media budget no wo so fix e wo me se ye on pese aba no so ye ti do boa mo na ne ma so timi e konti se we me pese me kasa free eye taxi rank ho na si abi dia me kasa e di free pani ba ko me nche ha ne bo nkomo na ma bisa no bia eko opani ni pato the more harm or kwaba edi ba ye woni TV so ene na eye omaimo eye finance minister eko na shebe governor ye media budget no kwakọ ready ada say awakoma eye budget no ye tax akoso ana so mana ba fam ye matutu mo amoso so butwi car moto fuel mo spare parts mo so dia be na mo so mo wo edi car part asem we ena no pay penyu no ba ase when be say me kan say agawa for the so awuni edumani mo ye din die and so I be a bit me aboa pa say I buy few areas for the sober to me. Nanka wa me de gina when you want to kura no come ni ba bi gina sa maye. So say ne be ya ye should be my ho you home he kakra. Na afin so pass me boy den. So pass me boy den pa ma wo kofitemu a. Sika kakra na wa twika na wanya no. Once I didn't sa ko to spare pass. Ti anyi kura na once ko fa kakra na be fie. Na dia be so. Nje ma adwuma na ye no na me nukura no nie
se abana ntete niema so a emmoa ye emmoa busua no nse wa ha oba hwela ya sana hai kunya hwe na so ba kwakoto fu e ne bo sa den we o tie kwana be pa ya ene home use 13 200 cities okay me bo ya din to ade se mo expect say ebia o kwe obeti tax so on tax me so my the tax cost so abe mo wan e cost so be on pi e se me o minor situation o minor wo se si am so some tax me cost so be on pa me just so be home so ye kon those who try point the best no o ma tax no em na for my
okay of me of so ending come on so na me misa no e wo ha say na o so enche na adwen so ha say na ya e cost so no ono so em fanatics opening also ye bisaw ene area memu ne ya nkasna obemo sana hene ogina me se begwam tax nsem ya ne nsem a obere ready media budget ye na mususu se aban kimi ye de bo mo am twika ene bu ya timamufo a ye nyina dada de nyina ye bo akoma na ye to niema so e wo man mu
de tell say ni na mi na kan so kaso sa to petum dia e be sa ha fa ye kwa isi ko bompa ese anka spare parts na ko nti so say tie fra tie okay 13 tie you say 2 million do the amount for price 1.8 okay donc iso sa be to petum dia e be ha pa ne ne odi anka petum no mani nyina ho say ya na ja price ni nyina anka sa spare parts anko eno aja mo say ha bo for ne say eni mani ade say no credit e di ni afuba yo omo de ba na omo ka ho ase na e ho no nya niam nti de ho na e to ne ade ne bo aye din de ba na se do obi apa bi no de je e so to a ball jointer say ball jointer ni to 70 cities they say 100 cities so you so matters so na so automatic tie 200 cities ba ko first 70 cities ba ko ba ne 200 do dia ma fukwa 1.8 so be sra ba ni say won ni mom kakra mai na e say de aka na ye she da
say eto koso be mo wa
ja be mo wa bi say ne o man si kon de say to sa koso de ya ne ayi nim de be bi e say nyame da nyamba e hu say enipa na amomwaye you know e koso de be mo wa bibre bi say ebre pa
okay ofa
Kwame meto nka pa
anti me ba taxi rank no se sia no tibamufo mo ha do ba fotutu omo hawo ne oba penisi ne omo de sode ahodo na omo de eto ye omo mpani anim enkanka omo asana henanim se onye bibi mfa homa omo se de be ya ene metimi aba fem na boa ma omo ne mutina so timi aye de enkoba se ye nyina ebetu afro omo mu atimi akoma ahodo so na omo so adwuma mo ye ne dan so betimi akoso bia omo hwehwe se eye omo mu sana hene obetimi ayede abo omo no e wo hase na no payi
Kwame ma ye na ase na ye mfa nsi wona ye gidi se after presentation no ye besan ababiem na ya twetwe enkomo ye nua be ma Kwame ba fajikum otu enkra efra sentimentem akoma 87.9 FM ena odini djuma ena wede amaneboy ede abesum ye nti ye gusu anka kra ye kono mantam nimu na yahwe sede omanfo no nso ehwe animu a ede kosi se owura kuntunkununku ofori ata chedehye obekwa akoginem emra hye bibefie na afei wode ne nsem akotudwa wode tudwa wie nso a yebese akomantam ni wa na omanfo no de na obohwe animu no eno an wo kan ye ana ase nye no a omasan ede omonsem ede atudwa nti ofa Sarah no
di e watwem ye betwen ye da so a ate enkonwa so twense presentation no be koso parliament e koso bibia ni ho ya ye be ma wankasa wani hu anaso waso entie wie nso e be sa bubu mu abafom ya fa emiamia ahodo ni bi na ye die ho nkomo ne ahwese ye ku yanim na aka abosom be sensia ma afe na ba wie no okwan ben e na be fa so e be boaye mo mani sikasem no ebetimi agira ne na so mo manfo nso ekomatimi ahia nti na baby a adwene no hwe baby ankomodie no akwa dudro na kogina COVID-19 levy ya de bai butafo aka so kan fo aka ase dwenifo na wa ma de watimi e bese jinsanso be na wo wadwadie so ya nti enam hu bi ma amanioma boa akosoro a manfo dudro na e kan se opanyin no enyin free ho
yo nanansana meye enchechemu na mfato bi hu se eba eto aban no ejejina eto kese pa ye hwe aban to a ye fe no indirect taxes no omo maame pa ne VAT.
Okay.
Into no VAT no so no before obe charge VAT no obe charge BBF no levies bia ansa na wasa charge VAT na atoso. Enti na ye the phone example say so automobile phone na say the cost no 1,000 cedis. That is the price company no airton, but because of say so ojiji to etoso edema abai nti na obe charge the various indirect taxes na edaso no. And I make us say indirect taxes no omo maame pa ne VAT. It means say VAT ho ba sempe na edwedifo ni na. Now say 1,000 ye wo etuo bi aye frɛ no get fan eno 2.5 eno be calculate the ato 1,000 so ye wo etuo bi so ye frɛ no NHIL levy eno so obe calculate e the ato so eno so ye 2.5 inti menu ni kabuma na ye 5%. Ena covid na tamana covid ni no na COVID-19 levy bi enu wo inti say o calculate 2.5 now they are 2,000 so to never say a kabuma 5% 5% on 1,000 let's say 50 cedis ni 1,050 unya 1,050 na sana wa ba be calculate 12.5% asan they are so sa 12.5% na no ni VAT won say na so pa make say indirect taxes ni omo ma me ni VAT no and na covid the buy no aban ede 1% ebe can sa 2.5 NHIL and then get fan and it's the same phone 1,000 cedis I will calculate of first 2.5 what's an calculate 2.5 BM get fan and NHI and we hold it that now what's an calculate COVID-19 levy which is 1% at the atos you see about 6% and instead of the initial 5% my 50 cedis they say be 6 my 60 cedis it's 1,060 and they say we are near some charge 12.5 on the 1,060 it's a ma eto near day e cost to be we no phone na nebuo no 1,000 cedis no they say na baba be do be bia 1,000 maybe 1,000 see na 60 cedis in that go be I say 1,100 and I say 1,200 now abai no so sakre mu say VAT na e wo ho no 12.5 no this year additional 2.5 asambe den ababa be count eti VAT na 12.5 no say 15% eti o charge you 2.5 get fan no I charge you 2.5 NHIL levy no I charge you 1% COVID-19 levy VAT na no so 12.5 you say no so about 15% eti be we eche no say phone na 1,000 you be to phone around 1,000 3,000 4,005 eti the dada so ni nyina ye eto any levies a ebeko aban honom and is say no say na edwedifo kan say 1% na first na any hon na COVID-19 na nke etimi to ade no ebia 1,050 no as you say about 1,060 no see ye 1% ni free on ma ebe sama ya ba 1,050 ni biem it's
na de na adwadifo frɛ no enye se ne sa de a yentete sa 2.5 yenyu 55 ni mfiri ho che no so ye 1% na particularly we say levy omubodin pa COVID-19 is it because COVID ni ho biem ni nti ana ase de yen
sa pepe because say abind the etubia ba etubia won a objective
okay
etubia won a scope objective ni enidaso enunti ne de sa eto no ye den eba na scope ni de ebe kavano area ben na ebe fa scope no and for how long obeye den obejije sa ato na o say get fan support education and NHIL support
national health
mo they say COVID-19 pan and no supported them ade e be support ye COVID-19 pandemic e ba ye e be support say nka ban be ni sika e dey atoto nose mask Veronica bucket sanitizers sanyoma ye hu COVID-19 no enu ti na ban dey sa ato ne ba but say ye hu sanyoma ni biem say World Health Organization may declare say COVID any global pandemic BM. Government of Ghana to President Akufo-Addo ono so ayeden our bisusu dia. It's not say ye the quadrin mu dia. And your COVID-19 na eba ye first na ni ho. And to be a order that first na ni ho. But pandemic ne ba ye asembisi enti na eba ye. And it says asem ni timi akon. Yakon akoden Ghana for ye discipline. Any continuous update at President Akufo-Addo dey buy any the health sector na yetimi age COVID dey free one no ma. This is how to no e dey pa na and for economic sense and as a financial analysis bia sa eto ne de nka ye best say enya de be ha aban pa nka se ni say no inflation akosro any CD dollar exchange rate in so no e was no as they say aban so etimi enya IMF deal any say aban so the e-levy aye den asaba no any say etimi akon COVID-19 pa dia say bibia ye gina akon ano aye gina pa ne dia nanka ebetimi a make some form of economic sense ye yi COVID-19 free one ma ebe boa e before. Okay,
here we are Mr. Jima ana what's in kana hayunia TV and out here at Fizuti live on Onua 95.1 FM Sabre Yabeko Parliament Yan TSS Finance Minister Ken Ofori attack akopie munti empotie sampotia wode ebetudwa fa media budget review for 2023 yaba and some do na na ka kire be pense mu na yamu.
It's in fulfillment of Section 28 of the Public Financial Management Act 2016, Act 921, and Regulation 24 of the Public Financial Management Regulation LI 2378. I respectfully, Mr. Speaker, request that the entire 2023 Media Fiscal Policy Review document is captured in the Hansard. Mr. Speaker, 8 months ago, I presented a 2023 budget statement economic policy of the government in Kabom budget. At the time, the economy was going through a very difficult period amidst unprecedented global turbulence. This was within the context of major external shocks coupled with domestic vulnerabilities triggered by credit rating downgrades, tightened domestic financing conditions, and increased costs of borrowing, with the cost of shipping a container increasing sevenfold in the 18 months following March 2020. Just about every country in the world grappled with soaring prices from 2021. Our country, like many others globally, experienced unusually sharp increases in food, fertilizer, and fuel prices, rising inflation, and exchange rate depreciation, leading to severe economic challenges and hardships for our people. A headline in the December 2022 edition of The Economist captured the global situation in these words, quote, 2022 has been a year of brutal inflation. Mr. Speaker, it is no exaggeration to say we cannot find another period in our history where so many different headwinds hit our economy at the same time with unrelenting speed and scale. Thankfully, as the members are beginning to show, and as many honorable members of the House have indicated to me in our engagements, we have together as a nation turned the corner. Turned the corner, Mr. Speaker. We have avoided the unimaginable, but what could have been so easily possible under different leadership circumstances. With a lot of effort, we have managed to avoid empty shop shelves for medicines and other essentials. We have seen no shortage of food. We have been spared the frustrating specter of long queues for fuel at our filling stations, and we have managed, in spite of all the challenges, to keep the lights on. Indeed, as the psalmist said in Psalm 118:23, this is the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes. This turning the corner is underpinned by the investments and sacrifices we have collectively made during the difficult period since March 2020. Mr. Speaker, it is important that we acknowledge some of the major milestones that this country has experienced in the last 3 years. We should, quote, be still and appreciate that despite our challenges as a country, we have been saved from many extreme conditions that others have suffered, including peace, health, security, continuous supply of power, and life itself indeed. Over the period, the country has gone through extremely difficult circumstances, and the gratitude of His Excellency the President and his government goes to the good people of Ghana for their patience, understanding, and positive contributions to government efforts to weather the storms. During the COVID-19 period, we indeed lost family members and friends. But it's also true that Ghana recorded some of the lowest cases of mortality and infections worldwide. This was due to the implementation of a swift and robust COVID-19 response program led by His Excellency the President. We recorded 171,653 COVID-19 cases and 1,462 unfortunate deaths, as against 10.8 million cases recorded and 228,738 deaths on the African continent alone, and 249 million recorded cases and 2 million deaths in Europe. May the souls of our friends and family faithfully departed rest in peace. We invested immensely in education to ensure that school years were not disrupted, and we did so because we knew the alternative would be significantly costlier to our society. That was why the President ensured that our children returned to school earlier to write the examinations to enable us to build the requisite human capital for the future and for them not to lose a precious year. We ensured consistent power supply and kept the lights on to enable businesses and households function, despite the increasing cost of legacy energy agreements. We continued paying salaries and wages of all public sector employees and kept everybody at work without laying off our workers, and factored in a 30% increment of base pay
Asayaba, chukuchaka, eye Onua Sankofa Festival Train. Afashana saba biobo na hini ekwe. Yedi echre ada yekwedidi eye ada asafutufia afashe kesiero ene basono Onua TV ene Onua 95.1 ene ada traditional council akayentume sieni afra yede ada asafutufia afashe kesiero ehyehyeswo brabesia Captain General the Smart abro ne na pamfo eye People's Assembly saso adafo mano ebe yiyensa no waduane nuamu na wadi adanuane bi we say hey emane na nsa no ye dese yi ena saso ena ahemfo a ewo kro no so nyina ebobodwa data no mahene no atrase ni akire ada amamra ni amane nyina ye be yi nyina ewo Onua TV so ya fa bi so ewo Onua FM so na dwumade ne ba wie ye kra no ya de James kese pa emoso kese artist na hwe nyina every stage ada no eye ada asafutufiam live on Onua TV and Onua FM 95.1 powered by Lawson Direman Beaters. Sponsors Gino Dentoral Charcoal Toothpaste, ATL Choice Non-Alcoholic Drink, Aqua Gold Mineral Water, Afashebi a guy. Onua FM, Onua TV, ya jire moho pa.
I indicated that we'll pursue major fiscal and monetary policy measures within the framework of the PCPEC. Our coordinated response to the macro-fiscal challenges, which His Excellency the President charged us to develop in March 2022 before going to the IMF, that's the PCPEC. As a first step towards fulfilling this objective, as the revenue and expenditure measures, as well as several other macro-critical economic policies we presented in the 2022 budget, and we are grateful for that. Along these lines, we also needed to create additional fiscal space by negotiating an International Monetary Fund program, 2, concluding a debt operations program, and 3, attracting significant investments, especially green investments, for a vibrant growth strategy. Mr. Speaker, I can now report that we have been diligent and resolute in implementing these measures and successfully negotiated the $3 billion US 3-year IMF ECF program, which was approved on 17th May 2023 to support the implementation of our PCPEC. Concluded on February 14th, the initial part of the debt operations, of which the domestic debt exchange program. Developed a framework for the V20 Climate Prosperity Plan to attract climate investments from the private sector, and initiated the Mutual Prosperity Dialogue to crowd in domestic and external private investment to underpin our growth strategy. These achievements have been with the support and commitment of this august House and the Ghanaian people. It demonstrates that when we speak with one voice, we can achieve what we set our minds to do. Genesis 11:6, if as one people speaking the same language, we have begun to do this, then nothing we plan to do will be impossible for us. Right Honorable Speaker, accordingly, His Excellency President Akufo-Addo has asked that I convey his profound gratitude to this House for passing all the revenue bills as well as expenditure measures. Indeed, our sincere gratitude also goes to all investors, financial institutions, and bondholders for the sacrifice, support, and forbearance in this difficult period of our country's economic history. We appreciate your contribution towards turning the corner and commitment to partner us in transforming the economy. We must also extend our appreciation to the IMF, the World Bank, and other development partners, as well as the G7 and G20 members who have stood so strongly with us. Mr. Speaker, for the first 6 months of the year, we continue making progress to exceed our non-oil revenue targets for the year. We have seen improvements in non-oil tax revenue collection despite some notable shortfalls in VAT. However, oil revenues are falling short of expectations due to changes in global prices. We will therefore undertake a downward review of the oil-related revenue as well as the corresponding expenditures to align with the underperformance. Specifically, this will impact the annual budget funding amount. Mr. Speaker, in view of the reasons outlined above, as well as the lower domestic interest payment and amortization following the completion of a part of the DDEP and the reduction in the foreign finance capex, the appropriation has been revised from Ghana cedis 227.7 billion as presented and approved in November 2022 to 206.0 billion Ghana cedis. This is in line with Regulation 24, Sub-Regulation 3 of Public Financial Management Act Regulation 2019, LI 2378. Mr. Speaker, we will therefore not require a supplementary budget. Mr. Speaker, government is, however, committed to pursuing a robust growth strategy within the limited fiscal space and our fiscal consolidation program. This will be done by attracting domestic and foreign private sector investment and expanding production, which will be encouraged and stimulated by government policies and agencies. Government's mutual prosperity dialogue with the private sector will seek to facilitate the ease of doing business in order to crowd in private, domestic, and foreign investments. Mr. Speaker, Security continues to be a priority of government. The United Nations recently reported that over 1,800 terrorist attacks resulting in nearly 4,600 deaths were recorded in our West Africa region in the first 6 months of this year. Due to this instability, among others, increasing numbers of West African citizens are seeking refuge in our country. This has required a review of our security expenditures within the limited fiscal space. Mr. Speaker, this 2023 mid-year fiscal policy review will therefore provide an update on economic performance for the first half year of 2023 and outlook for the rest of the year. Provide an update on the implementation of the IMF-supported PCPEC, including update on structural reforms and the progress towards achieving the quantitative performance criteria and indicative targets. Provide an update on the debt restructuring program, present a revised 2023 fiscal framework which aligns with the IMF-supported PCPEC, and outline government's growth strategy to drive the recovery process. I will now proceed to update the House on the macro-fiscal performance of the economy since 2022. Mr. Speaker, as we usually do, the 2023 budget was presented in November 2022 using end September 2022 data. We now have end December 2022 data, which indicates that overall real GDP growth was 3.1% compared to the revised target of 3.7%. Non-oil real GDP growth was 3.8% compared to the revised target of 4.3%. End December inflation rates of 54.1% compared to the projected 28.5%. Total revenue and grants for the period amounted to 96.7 billion, 15.8% of GDP, compared to the revised target of 96.84 billion, 16.4% of GDP. Total expenditure on commitment basis amounted to 165.1 billion Ghana cedis, 27% of GDP, against a revised target of 133.8 billion, 22.6% of GDP. Overall budget deficit on commitment basis was 11.8% of GDP, against a revised target of a deficit of 6.3% of GDP. Primary balance on commitment basis was a deficit of 4.3% of GDP, against a revised target of a deficit of 0.7% of GDP. On cash basis, the overall budget deficit was 10.7% of GDP, against a revised target of a deficit of 6.6% of GDP. The corresponding primary balance on cash basis was a deficit of 3.2% of GDP, against a revised target of a surplus of 0.4% of GDP. And gross international reserves was equivalent to 2.7 months of import cover. Mr. Speaker, with approval of Parliament, government set out to achieve the following key macroeconomic targets for 2023. Overall real GDP growth of 2.8%, non-oil real GDP growth of 3%, end December inflation rate of 18.9%, overall budget deficit of 5.9% of GDP on commitment basis, and 7.7% on cash basis. Primary balance commitment basis of a surplus of 0.7% of GDP and a deficit of 1.1% of GDP on cash basis, and gross international reserve to cover not less than 3.3 months of imports. As I've indicated, we have made significant progress on restoring macroeconomic stability, and the narrative is changing. The economy is showing signs of recovery, the exchange rate has stabilized, inflation has softened, and interest rates have declined since December 2022. Mr. Speaker, these outturns are the results of focused implementation of all the measures we presented in the 2023 budget and the positive sentiments arising from the progress of the IMF program, which I will now discuss. Mr. Speaker, towards addressing the macro-fiscal challenges the economy faced in 2022, government engaged the IMF to support the implementation of our PCPEC program. On 17th May 2023, the Executive Board of the IMF approved a 36-member standard credit facility in an amount equivalent to SDR's $2.242 billion, approximately $3 billion. The program is anchored on government PC PEG and designed to restore macroeconomic stability and debt sustainability. It includes extensive reforms to strengthen resilience and lay the foundation for stronger and more inclusive growth. Mr. Speaker, the program has been designed to address the key issues facing the economy through the following key priority targeted interventions. Large and front-loaded fiscal consolidation to bring public finances back on a sustainable path. The program envisages a cumulative fiscal adjustment of 5.1 percentage points of GDP over the program period 2023 to 2026, with a fiscal effort of 3.8 percentage points in 2023 alone. The primary deficit on commitment basis will be reduced from 4.3% of GDP in 2022 to 0.5% in 2023. The fiscal consolidation will be executed by both mobilizing more domestic revenue and improving efficiency of spending. 2, to protect the vulnerable through enhancement of existing social protection programs, including the Livelihood Empowerment Against Poverty (LEAP), National Health Insurance Scheme, the Capitation Grant, and the School Feeding Program. The 2023 budget, for example, doubled the benefits under the LEAP program as well as boosted the allocations to the School Feeding Program. 3, strong and ambitious structural reforms in tax policy, revenue administration, public financial management, financial sector, as well as strong measures to enhance revenue mobilization and address weaknesses in the energy and cocoa sectors. Both are critical to bring public finances back on sustainable path while creating fiscal space for critical development spending. 4, to bring inflation under control through prudent monetary policy, including appropriate monetary policy tightening and the elimination of monetary financing of the budget. Containing inflation pressures requires coordination between fiscal and monetary policies. 5, to rebuild international reserve buffers to 3 months of import by the end of the program. The Bank of Ghana is pursuing enhanced flexible exchange rate policies to help rebuild international reserves. 6, to restore sustainability and preserve financial stability following the domestic debt exchange program to support private investments and growth. And 7, to pursue reforms to encourage private investments, strengthen growth, and create more jobs. Mr. Speaker, it is instructive to note that our path towards securing an approved IMF-supported program has been characterized by speed and resoluteness. More specifically, the following key and significant milestones were accomplished. We achieved staff-level agreement in December 2022, 6 months after we formally requested for the IMF support to back our PC PEG. We're supported by China's agreement to co-chair Ghana's Paris Club Official Creditor Committee. We secured financing assurances for the Official Credit Committee, co-chaired by China and France on 12 May 2023, 5 months after our formal request in December 2022. We secured an IMF board approval on 17 May 2023, 5 months after the SLA and 10 months after a formal request for a fund program. We also secured IMF financing equivalent to 3 times Ghana's quota. We front-loaded disbursement of IMF resources with 40% in 2023 and the rest to be spread between 2024 and 2026, and successfully concluded a domestic exchange program. The results are clear. We are witnessing the catalytic impact of crowding in other resources. We are in discussions with the World Bank for a $900 million development policy operation and emergency support. The United States, through the International Development Finance Corporation, has announced a program to invest $300 million towards the construction of a data center under the G7 Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investments. This is through the Development Finance Corporation of the U.S. Mr. Speaker, several key stakeholders played diverse roles in Ghana's successful journey towards approval of the IMF-supported program. On behalf of His Excellency the President, I would like to again express our sincere gratitude to the Right Honourable Speaker, members of Parliament, our participating bondholders, retirees, financial institutions, and other stakeholders who played critical roles. Permit me to express our sincere gratitude to the Managing Director of the IMF, a team led by its Country Director, Stefan Roder, and the Executive Board for providing the unfathomable cooperation throughout the whole process. We are also grateful to the World Bank Group, the U.S. Treasury, U.S. Development Finance Corporation. Government appreciates our other development partners, both multilaterals like AFDB and AfriExim, and bilaterals for their support under the program. Mr. Speaker, as a nation, we must and will prevail. Indeed, our only recourse is to be successful at the upcoming first review of the program in September 2023 and all other subsequent reviews. We are therefore respectfully calling on every member of this august House and all our fellow Ghanaians to support these reforms. Mr. Speaker, to support the effective implementation of the IMF-supported PCPEG, the government has put in place an implementation strategy. Status of progress towards achieving the program objectives. Mr. Speaker, the IMF-supported program will be monitored and reviewed semi-annually based on agreed targets to be met by end June and end December each year. We will prepare for a comprehensive assessment of the targets by the IMF during the first review in September 2023, which will assess 9 structural benchmarks, 6 quantitative performance criteria, and 3 indicative targets in 2023. Mr. Speaker, the IMF-supported PCPEG has also prioritized social protection reforms to ensure that the vulnerable are protected from the impact of the ongoing fiscal adjustment. Social spending on health, social protection, and education will be closely monitored to ensure timely disbursement of funds to beneficiaries. In addition, an indexation mechanism for benefits under the LEAP program will be put in place by end September 2023. Furthermore, the coverage of LEAP will be expanded and its targeting improved to cover the extreme poor by 2024. Mr. Speaker, Cabinet also approved a turnaround strategy for Cocoa Board as part of measures to improve financial viability of the institution and to position it to deliver increased value for the people of Ghana. I take this opportunity to assure all our key stakeholders of government's commitment to the unwavering implementation of our very own PCPEG, which undergirds the IMF-approved program. Debt operations. Mr. Speaker, we announced in the 2023 budget statement that we will embark on a debt restructuring program to alleviate fiscal pressures by 1, reducing debt servicing costs, 2, improving debt sustainability, and 3, ensuring macroeconomic stability and economic growth. The restructuring is critical to the implementation of the program. To ensure a return to the path of debt sustainability, a comprehensive debt strategy centered on a restructuring program was pursued. Mr. Speaker, the perimeter for the restructuring includes both domestic, central government, and debt, and some parastatals, and external. The main aim of the operations is to reduce debt servicing costs and restore our debt sustainability. The debt operation focuses on achieving by 2028 the present value of overall debt and external debt to GDP to below 55% and 40% thresholds respectively, and 2, external debt service to revenue and exports to revenue below the 18% and 15% thresholds respectively. Mr. Speaker, on the domestic debt exchange program, on 5th December 2022, government launched the DDEP in a transparent manner while seeking to minimize its impact on bondholders. After 3 months of negotiations with the different bondholder groups and amendments to the original terms, government successfully completed the DDEP on 14 February 2022. Total bonds outstanding at the settlement date amounted to 126.978 billion Ghana cedis, of which 29.286 billion were held by pension funds, bringing the total eligible bonds to 97.7 billion cedis. The ministry received final participation of 88.9 billion Ghana cedis, representing 84.9% of total eligible bonds. The DDP has provided the government with increased fiscal flexibility and addressed cash and other liquidity constraints. Once again, we are grateful to all investors who participated in this exchange. Mr. Speaker, to complete the domestic debt operations, government announced in April 2023 its intention to further pursue the discussions around the following domestic debt instruments, which were excluded from the DDEP perimeter then: energy sector independent power producers, cocoa bills, local US dollar denominated bonds, and Bank of Ghana non-tradable debt. Out of these remaining debt instruments, government launched debt operations for the cocoa bills and local US denominated bonds on 14 July 2023. The settlement date is today, Mr. Speaker, 31st July 2023, and we look forward to a successful operation. Mr. Speaker, although pension funds were exempted from the main DDEP, we continue to engage them. Mr. Speaker, we are also engaging with the IPPs on debt relief and financing arrangements to achieve both debt sustainability for Ghana and financial sustainability for the energy sector. As part of the restructuring projects for external debt, government requested the treatment of the bilateral debt under the G20 Common Framework beyond the debt service suspension initiative. Government also held a series of engagements with its bilateral creditors via the Paris Club to provide financing assurances to support Ghana's IMF ECF request. The official creditor committee for bilateral creditors was established and co-chaired by China and France. The committee provided financing assurances on 12 May, as I stated, to support the IMF's board approval of Ghana's IMF ECF request on 17 May 2023. Mr. Speaker, government has also begun the process of negotiating with its commercial creditors, our Eurobond investors. 2 bondholder groups have been formed comprising domestic and regional bondholders, as well as international bondholders. Government has already shared a set of data and scenarios to commence discussions. On the restructuring of Eurobonds, we expect to receive counter offers from the bondholders in the short term and envisage an agreement by year end. Mr. Speaker, the financial sector comprising commercial banks, special deposit-taking institutions, insurance sector, and fund managers participated significantly in the DDEP. The effects of the debt operation of the financial sector is elevated liquidity and solvency risk from impairment losses. Regulators, including the Bank of Ghana, provide a temporary regulatory forbearance to mitigate the liquidity impact of the DDEP. Importantly, government is working with key partners to establish a Ghana Financial Stability Fund to provide liquidity and solvency support to the financial institutions. The eligibility criteria agreed with regulators and international partners will be published soon. Mr. Speaker, these macroprudential interventions and operations were also to address the impact of the large external shocks within a wider global economic context, which I now proceed to discuss. Mr. Speaker, we are also mindful of the impact of the debt exchange program on individuals, and government is working hard to stabilize the economy towards a faster economic recovery to ameliorate impact on the welfare of individuals. Mr. Speaker, global developments. The global economy continues to struggle through a patchy recovery phase following the shocks, including those from the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war. It is within such context that the IMF in its April 2023 World Economic Outlook update projects global output growth to decline significantly to 2.8% in 2023 from 3.4% in 2022, before rising slightly to 3% in 2024. The projected slowdown reflects synchronous policy tightening around the globe, especially in the United States, Euro areas, the United Kingdom, and China, to contain the surge in inflation and worsening financial conditions. Despite signs of modest growth in early 2023, persistent high inflation and the global financial market turmoil are proving too strong and dampened hopes of a robust recovery. Mr. Speaker, the price of crude oil declined by 15.7% between August 2022 and February 2023. This was due to a weakened demand, largely attributed to a huge decline in oil consumption in China. According to IMF's World Economic Outlook update, July 2023, crude oil prices are projected to fall from an average of $96.4 a barrel to $73.1 a barrel in 2023. However, gold and cocoa prices have performed better than anticipated. Mr. Speaker, on the domestic front, global development severely impacted the domestic economy. The performance of key indicators in 2022 as follows. Overall, real GDP growth declined from 5.1% in 2021 to 3.1% in 2022. This was lower than the 3.5% projected for the year. Non-oil GDP growth declined over the period, recording a growth of 3.8% compared to 6.6% recorded in 2021. Headline inflation accelerated consecutively from 13.9% in January to 29.8% in June, and to a peak of 54% in December 2022, following the sharp currency depreciation and surge in commodity prices. Interest rates broadly trended upwards across the spectrum of the yield curve, consistent with the tightening policy stance. The 91-day and 182-day Treasury bill rates increased to 35.48% and 36.23% respectively in December 2022, from 12.49% and 13.19% respectively in the same period 2021. Cumulatively, the Ghana cedi depreciated by 30.0%, 21.2%, and 25.3% against the US dollar, the pound sterling, and the euro respectively. This, compared with an appreciation of 3.5% against the euro and a depreciation of 4.1% and 3.1% against the US dollar and the pound respectively in 2021. And gross international reserves declined by 3.457 billion US dollars to 6.238 billion US dollars to 2.7 months of import cover. Mr. Speaker, on the fiscal front, there were several key developments in 2022. Government sought to, among others, strengthen its fiscal consolidation program, which commenced in 2021. The objective was to gradually return to the Fiscal Responsibility Act thresholds of a fiscal deficit of no more than 5% of GDP. The strategy included pursuing a strong revenue-led consolidation to complement expenditure rationalization measures. However, owing to the several factors, government fiscal policy suffered major setbacks from both external and domestic shocks. Mr. Speaker, before discussing the 2022 fiscal outturns, we would like to note that CPEC on commitment basis. To align with this requirement, government therefore had indicated in paragraph 210 of the 2023 budget statement that the fiscal accounts will henceforth be reported on commitment basis, thereby taking into account outstanding and paid commitments of government. Mr. Speaker, the assessment on commitment basis promotes transparency, enables a real-time monitoring of government's fiscal performance, and provides a real-time review on the payables, thus helping to prevent while reducing the accumulation of arrears. This information is also essential for the public to get a comprehensive view of the bold fiscal policies to resolve fiscal and debt sustainability in Ghana. Mr. Speaker, with this context, the provisional data on government's fiscal operations for 2022 indicate that 1. Total revenue and grants for the period amounted to 96.65 billion compared to the mid-year review target of 96.84 billion and the projected outturn of 98.08 billion. And on the other hand, total expenditures on commitment basis amounted to 165.06 billion Ghana cedis compared to the mid-year target of 133.84 billion and the projected outturn of 159.01 billion Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, the higher expenditure together with the lower revenue outturn resulted in an overall budget deficit on commitment basis of 72.19 billion, 11.8% of GDP, compared to the 2022 mid-year review target of 37 billion, 6.3% of GDP, and the projected outturn of 60.9 billion, 9.9% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, the corresponding primary balance on commitment basis for the period was a deficit of 26.51 billion, 4.3% of GDP, compared to the 2022 mid-year review target of a deficit of 4.36 billion, 0.7% of GDP, and the projected outturn of a deficit of 16.92 billion, 2.7% of GDP. Petroleum revenue and utilization for 2022. Mr. Speaker, total petroleum receipts, proceeds from liftings and other petroleum receipts, as of December 2022, amounted to 1.43 billion. The amount comprises receipts from the 63rd to the 68th liftings from the Jubilee field, the 20th and 21st liftings from the 10 fields, and the 9th and 10th and 11th liftings from the Sankofa Jinyame field. In addition to the total receipts for the year under review, petroleum receipts that spilled over from 2021 to 2022 was $14.82 million, bringing the total amount distributed to $1.44 billion. This compares to the amount distributed of $808.6 million for the same period in 2021. A total of $581.5 million was transferred into the Ghana Petroleum Funds 2022 compared to $227 million in 2021. Out of the amount transferred, the Ghana Heritage Fund received $174 million against $68 million in 2021, while the Ghana Stabilization Fund received $407.06 million compared to $159.24 million in 2021. The total amount transferred in 2022 from petroleum liftings and related proceeds to the annual budget was $526.31 million compared to $352.79 million in 2021. Mr. Speaker, on public debt developments, as at end December 2022, Ghana's central government debt and guaranteed debt in nominal terms stood provisionally at $435.3 billion, up from $351.8 billion at end 2021, representing an increase of 23.7%. Using the revised GDP released by the Ghana Statistical Services in April 2023, the debt to GDP ratio as at end 2022 stood at 71.3%. Mr. Speaker, the composition of the total debt stock was made up of provisional amount of $240.9 billion, equivalent to 39.5% of GDP, and $194.4 billion, equivalent to 31.8% of GDP, for external and domestic debt, respectively. Mr. Speaker, I now proceed to update the House on the performance of the economy since January 2023 and the reason why there's a consensus that we are indeed turning the corner. Available data indicates that overall first quarter growth for 2023 was 4.2%, up from 3% recorded for the same period in 2022. This growth, Mr. Speaker, largely reflected an increase in the services sector, which recorded a growth of 10.1%. Headline inflation is in the first half of 2023 from the peak of 54.1% in December 2022. Headline inflation gradually trended downwards from 53.6% in January 2023 to 42.5% in June 2023. The moderation in inflation was largely supported by monetary policy tightening, relative stability in the exchange rate, and lower and stable export petroleum prices. Cumulatively, the Ghana cedi depreciated by 22.1% against the US dollar in the year to July 17, 2023, compared to 21.1% in the same period in 2022. The cedi, excluding the January 2023 depreciation of 20%, has depreciated by an impressive 1.8% between February and January 17, 2023. Total export receipts, Mr. Speaker, fell by 7.9% to $8.2 billion on the back of lower crude oil export receipts. Crude oil exports declined by 41.3% year-on-year due to a 21.4% decline in volumes and 25.3% fall in prices. Current account recorded a provisional surplus of $849 million compared with a deficit of $1.1 billion for the same period 2022. And gross international reserves dropped from $6.2 billion at the end of December 2022 to $5.3 billion, 2.5 million in June 2023, reflecting BOGs reducing their foreign liabilities in line with the IMF program. Net international reserves received a boost from gold reserves and improved to $2.3 billion to 1.1 months of import cover compared to $1.4 billion or 0.6 months of import cover recorded at the end of December 2022. Mr. Speaker, on banking developments and the outlook, the banking sector posted unexpected, relatively strong performance during the first half of the year. Despite the lingering effects of the DDEP, the banks have reported increased deposits and investments, higher profitability, and return on equity of over 35%. The impact of the DDEP, such as the increase in non-performing loans, was partly moderated by the timely introduction of temporary regulatory reliefs. In the outlook, the operationalization of the $750 million Ghana Financial Stability Fund and the planned recapitalization of banks would ensure stability as well as strengthen financial intermediation to support the private sector. Mr. Speaker, the provincial data on government fiscal operation for the first half of 2023 indicate: 1. A slower pace in expenditure execution relative to revenue shortfall, resulting in an overall budget deficit on commitment basis of 6.3 billion Ghana cedis, 0.8% of GDP, compared to the 2023 half-year budget deficit targets of 28.3 billion or 3.5% of GDP. A corresponding primary balance on commitment basis of a surplus, Mr. Speaker, of 8.8 billion Ghana cedis, 1.1% of GDP, compared to the target of a surplus of 310 million Ghana cedis. Overall cash deficit of 10.3 billion, 1.3% of GDP, against the 2023 half-year budget target of 35.4 billion, 4.4% of GDP, and a corresponding primary balance on cash basis of a surplus of 4.8 billion, 0.6% of GDP, against the 2023 half-year deficit target of 6.9 billion or 0.9% of GDP. We are back on track to a positive primary balance. Mr. Speaker, the fiscal balances are driven by total revenue and grants for the first half of 2021 billion, 8.4% below the target of 64.7 billion. Despite the shortfall, the outturn shows a nominal year-on-year growth of 41.8%. The key driver of revenue deviation is a lower than programmed oil receipts and total expenditure of 68.5 billion, 26.3% below the program expenditure of 92.9 billion. All other expenditure lines were contained within their respective targets for the period, except for compensation of employees and expenditure on goods and services. The higher than program compensation of employees outturn stems from higher payments for wage and salaries from the implementation of the 30% base pay increase for public sector workers, which was agreed to after the 2023 budget was presented and approved by this August House last year. We needed, Mr. Speaker, to protect our workers. Mr. Speaker, government introduced several revenue measures to support the fiscal consolidation and growth agenda. The policy interventions were specifically targeted at growing the revenue base to yield an estimated 1.35% of GDP. The Ministry of Finance and GRA are working together to ensure the realization of the full yield in the near future through enhanced collection efforts, governance, and EVAT implementation. Mr. Speaker, arising from the DDEP, several structural changes have commenced in the reporting of Ghana's debt data. The debt from the special purpose vehicles, which previously was not part of the central government debt, has now been included. Furthermore, we'll be including the long-term debt of selected SOEs such as Cocoa Board and contingent liabilities arising from the IPPs, PPAs, and financial sector recapitalization. Mr. Speaker, the macroeconomic environment has changed significantly since the 2023 budget was presented to this House in November 2022. Mr. Speaker, although pressure still exists and there are formidable risks in the horizon, our economy is in a better position than it was 7 months ago, as the macroeconomic environment has seen relative stability since the beginning of the year. This is largely explained by factors including the positive sentiments following the staff-level agreement reached in December 2022, $3 billion IMF ECF program, the eventual passage of all fiscal measures in the 2023 budget by the House, and the completion of the DDEP program, and China's agreement to co-chair the ODC. I have also discussed the significant improvements in the key macroeconomic indicators, including inflation, exchange rate, interest rates, reserve position, growth rate, and the performance of the bank since 2022. Mr. Speaker, all these developments, together with the need to align with the targets of the IMF-supported PC-PEC program, warrant a division to the macroeconomic framework. This was necessary because the framework was guided by the September 2022 data that underpinned the 2023 budget in November 2022. The revisions to the macro-fiscal framework generally seek to align the 2023 mid-year fiscal review with the IMF ECF-supported PC-PEC program. Mr. Speaker, key revisions to the macro-fiscal target for 2023 year include: 1. Overall real GDP growth rate of 1.5% down from 2.8%. Non-oil revenue GDP growth rate of 1.5% down from 3%. End period headline inflation of 31.3% from 18.9%. Primary balance on commitment basis of a deficit of 0.5% of GDP compared to a surplus of 0.7% of GDP, aligning with IMF-supported primary balances. Gross international reserves sufficient to cover at least 0.8 months of imports of goods and service by 2023. Mr. Speaker, revisions to GDP projections, the overall real GDP growth for 2023 has been revised to 1.5% from 2.8%, and non-oil real GDP growth has also been revised to 1.5% from 3%. The downward revision in projected growth for 2023 is an indication of a broad slowdown in the three sectors of the economy as a result of factors such as the fiscal consolidation plan and difficult global conditions. Mr. Speaker, overall GDP growth is, however, projected to rebound to 2.8%, 4.7%, and 4.9% in 2024, 25, and 26, respectively. This is a result of implementation of growth-oriented and structural transformation strategies in the PCPEC. We have, however, been charged in the PCPEC to develop an enhanced growth strategy supported by crowding in of private, domestic, and foreign investment to further boost growth. We are confident of a private sector outlook to boost growth and jobs. Mr. Speaker, the 2023 revised fiscal framework is now fully aligned with the IMF program fiscal objectives in terms of primary balance, cash and commitment, revenue path, and the trajectory of primary expenditures. The drivers of the revisions to 2023 fiscal framework includes fiscal developments for January to June 2023 reflecting shortfalls in revenues and lower spending, increase in base pay on single spine salary structure of 30% compared to the assumed 20% for the 2023 budget, partial restoration of cap transfers to the NHIS and GET fund, the impact of the completed DDEP on debt service costs, as well as on revenue mobilization, IMF ECF program disbursement for 2023 of $1.2 billion and reflection of other catalytic financing, including the World Bank's US $530 million, a DPO of $300 million, and emergency projects of $233 million, and expected disbursement of $103 million from the AFDB. Revision in exchange rates, interest rates, crude oil prices, crude oil volumes, and GDP projections, and the need to align 2023 mid-year review to the approved IMF project-supported PCPEC. These realignments, Mr. Speaker, in the 2023 fiscal framework results in a revised primary balance on commitment basis of a deficit of 0.5% of the revised GDP. This is an adjustment of 3.2% from the 3.5% of GDP, lower than the initial target of a surplus of 0.7% of GDP set in the 2023 budget. This aligns with the IMF-supported PCPEC fiscal consolidation path. Mr. Speaker, at the time of presenting the 2023 budget, benchmark revenue crude oil prices was $88.5 per barrel, was used to project petroleum revenue for 2023 in line with provisions of the Petroleum Revenue Management Act. As amended, recent global economic developments had led to a decreased demand for crude oil. Therefore, consistent with Section 7 of the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, the average crude oil price has been revised to $74 per barrel, down from the price of $88.55 per barrel used in the 2023 budget. Accordingly, the total petroleum receipts have been revised downwards from $1.48 billion to $1.008 billion, representing a 32% decline. Mr. Speaker, in the 2023 budget, government outlined a series of measures to mitigate the impact of the severe economic challenges and also to preserve growth. These include the implementation of flagship programs such as the One District, One Factory, Planting for Food and Jobs, Phase 2, Strategic Anchor Industries, Infrastructure Poverty Eradication and Program, IPEP, Ghana Cares, U-Start, Agenda 111, among others. Mr. Speaker, within the context of our IMF-backed PCPEC, these interventions assume greater significance in promoting growth and medium-term fiscal consolidation. In addition, as stated earlier, we are pursuing a social protection agenda to mitigate the impact of adjustment on the vulnerable. Mr. Speaker, in line with government's unwavering commitment to industrialization, the implementation of the flagship One District, One Factory initiative is on course. As of June 2023, 126 factories were operational nationwide. Over 160,000 direct and indirect jobs have been created, especially for the youth who have been mobilized to establish agro-processing factories in 58 districts. Mr. Speaker, government initiated the Agenda 111 infrastructure deficits in the health sector and improve healthcare outcomes in the country post-COVID-19. As of May 2023, total payments under the program stood at $189 million with 83 active projects on site in all 16 regions of the country. Mr. Speaker, Planting for Foods and Jobs has brought substantial improvements in Ghana's agriculture sector. This has resulted in increased food security, employment along agricultural value chains, and accessibility of raw materials for developing industries. The program has directly contributed to increased crop yields for major food staples such as maize, rice, and soya by 135%, 67%, and 18% respectively within the period. After a comprehensive review, government is finalizing PFJ Phase 2 to ensure a more efficient and targeted support for the agriculture sector. The key elements of Phase 2 are inputs credit systems, storage and distribution infrastructure, commodity trading, and digitized platforms. Mr. Speaker, I can also report that efforts towards promoting commercial agriculture, building technological capability, and advancing digitalization under the Ghana Cares program are on track. Last year, I indicated the government is spearheading the Economic Enclaves project to establish growth poles in key locations, including Kasunya, Greater Accra, Kumawu, Ashanti, and Banda in OT regions. The approach under the EEP is to provide agriculture infrastructure and land development support to entrepreneurial youth and the private sector. Mr. Speaker, to enhance production and value addition in the enclaves, the provision of ancillary services such as housing, training, facilities, irrigation, canals, farm roads, and electricity have also commenced. Mr. Speaker, it is gratifying to note that the domestic private sector has responded positively to the provision of these services. About 10 medium and large-scale entrepreneurs with experience in the commercial agriculture space have applied to play diverse roles ranging from anchor farmers to machine and equipment services in the EEP site in Kasunya. Mr. Speaker, in partnership with the National Service Scheme, about 20,000 acres of land in Sechere Kumawu in the Ashanti region is being developed to accelerate maize, tomato, groundnuts, and animal production. Mr. Speaker, government expects that by end 2023, the DEP will have fully seeded some 7,500 acres of rice onboarded qualified private sector entrepreneurs as anchor farmers embarked on value chain activities such as rice milling and packaging in Kasunya, and developed and seeded 1,500 acres of lands in Kumawu and Banda, respectively, and also engaged private sector partners in these enclaves. With these efforts, Mr. Speaker, we expect to gradually drive down the food component of inflation, create jobs for our youth, improve food security, and reduce the volatility of the forest market. USTA, Mr. Speaker, to equip participants with entrepreneurial skills, investment readiness tools, as well as coaching and mentoring services under the USTA initiative, 26,626 persons nationwide have received business advisory support services since its launch last year. We'll continue to work with participating financial institutions, National Entrepreneurship and Innovations Program, and Ghana Enterprises Agency to provide soft loans and managerial skills for the setting up of youth-led enterprises. Mr. Speaker, the National Entrepreneurship and Innovation Program with support from the Ghana Economic Transformation Project launched the Hubs Acceleration Grant Program in April of this year. The program has supported 30 business and innovation hubs with grants to resource startups in communities nationwide. Each hub has received up to US $180,000 and is required to resource 20 startups. In the second half of the year, 50 new startups will be supported to set up across the country. Mr. Speaker, to make Ghana the tourism hub for the West Africa region, the domestic and regional tourism campaign.
Honorable Minister, kindly take a sip of water while Mr. Speaker takes back the chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, to make Ghana the tourism hub for the West Africa region, the domestic and regional tourism campaign dubbed Experience Ghana, Share Ghana was intensified across the country by government. Our goal is to complement this campaign. The Kwame Nkrumah Memorial Park, which was redeveloped and modernized with support from the World Bank and other development partners, was commissioned by President Akufo-Addo on 4th July 2023. The redeveloped park will boost domestic and heritage tourism and is expected, Mr. Speaker, to attract over 1 million tourists annually. Government will continue with the redevelopment of Aburi Botanical Gardens, Salaga and Picora slavery camps, and Yas Santua Mausoleum to boost domestic tourism. Furthermore, in partnership with the Ghana Museums and Monuments Board, efforts will continue to renovate selected forts, castles, and museums across the country. Mr. Speaker, government will work closely with the private sector to improve key tourist sites and events as part of the Beyond the Year of Return initiative. We have made considerable progress towards achieving 1.2 million visitors for 2023, with 150,000 jobs along the value chain, and 2 million foreign visitors, and 1.5 million in the domestic tourism by 2025. Mr. Speaker, to improve mobility and accessibility, as well as safety along major trunk roads, the following projects are at various stages of completion. Work on 31.2 kilometers Asim-Fosu-Asim-Praso portion of the National Trunk Road N8 was completed and commissioned in June 2023. Accra-Tema Beach Road, Lot 1 and Lot 2, 79% and 89% complete respectively. Construction of a 3-tier interchange at Nungwa Barrier is ongoing. Development works on the Kumasi Lake Road and drainage extension project 98% complete. Selected roads in Sekondi and Takoradi Phase 1 is a fifth of the way complete. Tema Flower Road 30%. In Samao Fanko 26%. Reconstruction of Bechimen Techimentia Akumadan Road 64% complete. Reconstruction of Aguna and Kota in Kwanta Takwa Road 34% complete. Phase 2 of Obechabili Lamte Circle Interchange and other ancillary works 86% complete. Construction of a 4-tier interchange at Swami in the Asanchi region to commence. Construction of 50 prefabricated bridges in all 16 regions and continued in 2023 are 86% complete. Design, fabrication, and delivery of 87 steel panel bridges is ongoing with 45 bridges delivered. New bridges under construction at Chifu-Praso to separate vehicular traffic from the railway line is 93% complete. Government will embark on a community roads improvement program to increase productivity and facilitate the transportation of food crops. District assemblies will be given complementary equipment to ensure that their local roads are motorable throughout the year. Mr. Speaker, These notwithstanding, government remains committed to improving road infrastructure in line with the fiscal consolidation plan in the IMF-backed PCPEC program and in partnership with the private sector. Mr. Speaker, the road sector's public-private partnership program for the financing, construction and management of road infrastructure has 2 projects at different stages of preparation. Phase 1 of the Accra-Tema motorway extension project, 31.7 kilometers, involves the reconstruction of the motorway. The concession agreement and draft engineering, procurement and construction agreement have been finalized and will be laid in this House. The development of Tema arterial roads will be structured on a PPP basis using the build, operate and transfer model. The appraisal of the project is ongoing. Mr. Speaker, civil works on phase 1 of the Anomabo Fisheries College project is complete, and enrollment and training of students will commence by end of the year. As part of efforts to prevent diversion and hoarding of premixed fuel, which results in acute shortages, 37 out of a target of 50 premixed automated vending machines were installed in various landing beaches at Elmina, Choco, and Onua, among others. Government will install the remaining 13 automated vending machines by end of the year at various landing beaches across the country. Government has also piloted the use of electronic monitoring systems on trawlers to help check illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing practices. Mr. Speaker, under the Infrastructure for Poverty Eradication Program, government continues to embark on strategic investments across our communities nationwide in line with fiscal consolidation plan through the development authorities. Approximately 340 projects have been completed and accordingly handed out to the beneficiary communities. The remaining 297 projects are at different stages of development, of completion. Mr. Speaker, as part of our efforts to take full advantage of AFCFTA, government has established an export trade house in Nairobi, Kenya, to promote made in Ghana products and services. We have also undertaken a marketing expansion expedition to Kenya with 63 Ghanaian companies to introduce them to the East African market. Government has also facilitated the issuance of AFCFTA certificates of origin to 51 Ghanaian companies and businesses covering 300 product lines, indicating eligibility to be traded under AFCFTA. Mr. Speaker, government remains committed to promoting access to competitive financing for the private sector. Over the course of the past 5 years, government has established and recapitalized critical institutions that are able to provide financial intermediation to the private sector. These institutions include GERSEL, Development Bank of Ghana, Consolidated Bank of Ghana, the Ghana Commodity Exchange, the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, and the Venture Capital Trust Fund. Mr. Speaker, as the economy recovers, we need to support these critical institutions to deepen their interaction with private sector to spur growth and create more jobs. Government will place emphasis on supporting DBG capital raising to $1 billion mark in the medium term and disbursing about $1 billion Ghana cedis in loans from the current 450 million by end of the year. DBG and GESEL to provide partial credit guarantees that will reduce risk and attract more private sector actors to expand agriculture operations. Operationalizing an equity fund in partnership with other private sector investors to augment existing capital for SMEs by DBG. And supporting GIF to execute commercially sustainable infrastructure construction solutions, including the Agenda 111 hospitals, Accra-Tema Expressway project, and affordable university hostel accommodation. Mr. Speaker, the Ghana Nuclear Power Program has made significant policy progress towards the development of Ghana's first nuclear power plant. Government has shortlisted vendor companies and countries to identify the economical and resilient nuclear power technology for Ghana as a source of clean and sustainable energy and other peaceful purposes. Mr. Speaker, total oil production from all the producing assets within Ghana was approximately 18.5 million barrels from January to May 2023. This translates to an average production of 122,000 barrels per day. Total gas exports to the gas processing plant at Atuabo and the onshore receiving facility at Zanzule within the same.
Honorable Minister, just a minute. Honorable members, having regard to the state of business of the House, I direct that sitting be held outside the prescribed period. I so direct. Minister, you may continue.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the cash waterfall mechanism and the natural gas clearing have been used to equitably distribute revenues in the sector. Under the updated ESRP, the cash waterfall mechanism is being reformed to ensure mandatory compliance to provide cash flow predictability to key players, IPPs and state energy entities within the energy sector. To address the impact of excess capacity payments on the economy, government has sustained collaborative engagement of IPPs. Currently, IPPs are being engaged to restructure their accrued outstanding balances and eliminate payment shortfalls and arrears accrual in the sector. The gas sales agreement between VRA and NGAS has been renegotiated to reduce the take-or-pay commitment and other financial obligations to the state. Mr. Speaker, the World Bank estimates that climate change could cost Ghana approximately 1.7% of GDP annually by 2030 if left unaddressed. Cognizant of this assessment, government is working to secure carbon financing to support its nationally determined contributions and meet its commitment under the Paris Agreement. This will drive foreign direct green investments to benefit local businesses. Mr. Speaker, as part of our efforts to address loss and damage from climate change, Ghana, as one of the first Pathfinder countries, launched the in-country process for Ghana's participation in the Global Shield Against Climate Risk and the Global Risk Modeling Alliance. These initiatives will enable us to assess quantitatively our climate risk, design solutions informed by the data, and facilitate access to resources from the Global Shield. Mr. Speaker, government in partnership with the Green Climate Fund has established the Ghana Shear Landscape Emission Reduction Project at an estimated cost of $54.5 million. The project will focus on the shear landscape and will address the country's efforts to reduce emissions from deforestation and forest degradation. Additionally, government is implementing the Ghana Cocoa Forest RED program, which covers 5.9 million hectares, 79% of reserves, 21% on reserves in 7 regions. The program will benefit 12 million urban and rural residents. Ghana has become the second country in Africa after Mozambique to receive RED class payments in January 2023. Under the leadership of the President, Mr. Speaker, we are transforming the Climate Vulnerable Forum and V20 into permanent intergovernmental organizations. The aim is to champion principally a fair share agenda to ensure appropriate financing for adaptation, mitigation, and loss and damage, whilst leveraging our natural resources to raise carbon financing for accelerated climate action and to ensure that the 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature threshold is not breached. The President, Mr. Speaker, currently chairs the Climate Vulnerable Forum, while the Finance Minister chairs the V20 group of finance ministers. This is an organization of 58 countries with a population of 1.5 billion people in the most affected regions of the world. Mr. Speaker, government continues to sustain social protection programs to protect the poor and the vulnerable. The half-year performance of the identified programs are provided below. Under the LEAP program, government disbursed a total of 169.95 million as of June 2023 to 346,000 households comprising 1.5 million individuals. This includes the increase of the monthly grant to beneficial households from 32 cedis to 64 cedis for one-member household and 38 cedis to 76 for two-member households. Our target under this program period is to reach about 8% of the population, i.e. 2.5 million people. Under the Ghana School Feeding Program, coverage increased considerably from the 1.67 million beneficiaries in 2016 to 3.8 million beneficiaries by 2023. The feeding grants cost per meal, per child, per day increased from 1 cedi to 120 cedis, 1 cedi 20 pesos for the 2023 academic year. We have also settled all arrears owed to caterers under the program for the second and third terms of the 2022 academic year and the first term of the 2023 academic year. The capitation grant contributed to increased enrollment in public basic schools from 6,048,897 pupils for the 2021-2022 academic year to 6,114,302 pupils for the 2022-2023 academic year. Under the free senior high school, technical and vocational education and training free TVET programs, a total of 447,396 first year students enrolled during the 2022-2023 academic year to bring the total number of free senior high school TVET beneficiaries to 1,318,035 students. Government continued with the construction of 9 state-of-the-art TVET centers to offer modern facilities and equipment, enable effective skills training, and empower young people with the relevant skills required for employment and entrepreneurship. Under complementary education for underprivileged groups, including out-of-school children, government commenced the implementation of Cycle 8 of the Complementary Basic Education Program in February 2023 with a total enrollment of 5,000 learners as at end 2023. Mr. Speaker, the PCPEG government program is implementing with the support of the IMF ECF facility requires strong fiscal consolidation. This will enable us quickly re-establish macroeconomic stability and debt sustainability. These are necessary preconditions for long-term economic growth, job creation, and rapid transformation. A key pillar of the PCPEG is the focus on inclusive growth. Our renewed push for growth is informed by the usual experience that fiscal consolidation tends to have negative impact on growth. For the medium term, we are targeting revised economic growth rates of 1.5%, 2.8%, and 4.7% for 2025. Mr. Speaker, we need to be deliberate and strategic in our actions if we are to exceed our post-COVID-19 strong economic growth, which averaged 7% compared to the 4.5% and 2.6% in lower middle income countries and sub-Saharan Africa. With the economy showing signs of stabilization, government intends to pursue a growth agenda that is fully aligned with the 2028 timeline for returning to a path of debt sustainability. Mr. Speaker, given the limited fiscal space as well as our determination not to accumulate new arrears, our growth agenda will be mainly financed from domestic and external private sector investments, as well as a rationalization of ongoing programs. The approach is to prioritize existing programs that are critical for growth and can be implemented to deliver quick results without huge demands on the available budgetary resources. Ultimately, we will aggressively encourage the private sector under the Ghana Mutual Prosperity Dialogue framework to promote shared growth anchored on job creation, food security, exports, and import substitution. Towards this objective, government expects to finalize a growth strategy in August 2023, an enhanced growth strategy that is. Mr. Speaker, the key elements of the enhanced growth strategy include accelerating scaling up and aggregation in agriculture and value addition for key staples such as rice, poultry, maize, soya, and tomatoes, supporting industrial parks and economic zones that promote innovation and positive spillovers and efficiency for key sectors such as the automotive, pharmaceutical, technology, textiles, and garment industry, promoting tourism to attract international and domestic tourists to boost incomes and create jobs, deepening the digitalization of public service to promote efficiency in service delivery and protecting the public purse, expanding housing delivery programs to improve access to jobs and accommodation, and deepening financial intermediation programs to enhance inclusion and entrepreneurship. Mr. Speaker, preparing this 2023 mid-year budget, we have held extensive engagements with Cabinet and with also diverse stakeholders, including organized labor, employer associations, AGI, Ghana Union of Traders, GUTA, Peasant Farmers Association, civil society organizations, Chamber of Mines, think tanks, African Leadership Institute for West Africa, the academia, faith-based organizations, the investor community, Council of State, National Development Planning Commission, chief directors, PPME, directorates of MDAs, chief executive of all metropolitan, municipal, and industrial assemblies, and many, many others. In all of these meetings, as Speaker, stakeholders provided insights into issues such as widening the tax net, SOE governance, expenditure controls, optimizing extractive industry contributions, providing increased and targeted support to agriculture and industry, revamping ports operations and customs duties, as well as growing and changing the structure of the economy. Mr. Speaker, this feedback has been illuminating and well received. The faith-based organization, for example, agreed to form a committee to educate their congregation on their responsibilities to paying taxes. We will continue to engage to find mutually acceptable solutions as we prepare the 2024 budget statement in November 2023. Mr. Speaker, our engagement with the private sector was more about how to manage the economic crisis that befell us. The result is that we are seeing today, we have indeed turned the corner. The crisis is behind us. There is greater certainty and predictability in the economy now than was the case previously. Businesses can plan better. The task ahead of us now is how to get businesses to do better. Starting from August and as part of preparations for the 2024 budget, the ministry, together with other relevant sector ministries and agencies, will be hosting a series of strategic engagements with various industries to help us tailor government interventions to their specific needs. There is a big opportunity for us as a country to rebuild our economy, to be more resilient and vibrant than before, and to have the capacity to deliver more for the masses. This is the focus of government now, and with the help of this House and the support of the nation and the guidance of the Almighty, we know we will get there. Mr. Speaker, last Friday, I had a singular privilege to be invited to participate in the joint caucus meetings of Parliament. Indeed, the meeting effectively reflected the theme of the 2023 Carbon budget. Mr. Speaker, it was a pleasant and intimate experience. I appreciated the opportunity to engage and receive valuable feedback from the honorable members. I want to thank the leadership of the House for that opportunity and the shared agency which was exhibited to transform our economy. Mr. Speaker, I'll be the first to admit that it has been an extraordinarily difficult year for our country and our citizens. Whilst most countries are still going through difficulties due to what is happening globally, our economic crisis also emanates from fundamental and systemic weaknesses that we must boldly confront. These include our low revenue to GDP ratio, our high demand and dependence on imports, including food products that can easily be produced here, our inefficient power management, lack of robust expenditure and commitment control systems, the numerous statutory funds of expenditure and economic governance, and weak SOE governance. Mr. Speaker, what I have outlined today begins a strong effort on the part of government to address these issues. Most of the structural reforms we proposed in the PCPEC, which we secured an IMF program, are geared towards addressing these fundamental issues. In the next 15 months, there will be renewed efforts to undertake the necessary reforms and implement very critical measures. Mr. Speaker, I want to once again acknowledge the sacrifice that our people have made, especially in the rollout of the DDP, and governments sincerely appreciate all these sacrifices. We are, Mr. Speaker, a resilient people, but we must be resolute if we are to get our community across the Jordan. On our part, we will ensure that we implement systems to enhance revenue collection through compliance measures to bring public finances back to a sustainable path while growing the real sector of the economy, especially agriculture. Implement the necessary structural reforms to strengthen expenditure commitment control, avoid arrears accumulation, and protect the public purse. Strengthen SOE governance, review statutory funds, and ensure improved alignment of key priorities, address the energy sector challenges, and implement the accelerated community roads improvement phase 2 to expand motorability and improve roads nationwide. Mr. Speaker, while concluding the 2023 budget statement in November 2022 in this House, I did emphasize that our unity in Kabom will be vital in confronting the daunting challenges facing our nation. Mr. Speaker, today I provided updates to demonstrate that we have delivered on these critical areas. We thank fellow Ghanaians and partners for their invaluable support and sacrifices. Our economy is showing signs of stabilization, and we are deeply grateful for the abiding grace of God, which has been more than sufficient to enable us to turn this corner. By being hopeful, speaking the same language of productivity, growth, and working closely together, we are securing our own collective success. Mr. Speaker, the implementation of ongoing fiscal adjustment and sustained investment in our people have contributed immensely to the stabilization we are seeing in the economy. Exchange rate has stabilized, inflation has softened, and interest rates have declined since 2022, and private investments have been announced due to increased investor confidence in our economy. Ordinarily, these positive trends should ease the burden on our pockets. As a finance minister and a family man myself, I'll continue to work hard to build and sustain a favorable macroeconomic environment and remain confident that the prices of goods and services will reflect the trend for all of us, for all our families and enterprises to enjoy. Mr. Speaker, we must all work together. Regulators, market federations, unions, individuals, and play our part to ensure consumers are treated fairly to complete the turnaround. This mid-year fiscal policy review has outlined a strategy for realigning our program to sustain our progress to stability. We have not asked, Mr. Speaker, for additional funding. We have not asked for new tax measures. We have committed to stay within appropriation and be even more efficient in mobilizing resources and managing expenditure. Mr. Speaker, we have indicated that we are focused on structural reforms to address systemic weaknesses and strengthen resilience in key areas including revenue mobilization, expenditure management, commitment control, and arrears clearance, debt management, financial stability, as well as energy and cocoa sector SOE reformation. Rejuvenating the growth agenda of a prioritized growth strategy which emphasizes private sector-led investment in areas such as agriculture, local manufacturing, tourism, and digital transformation. The phase 2 of the Food for Jobs program, aquaculture, U-Start, Economic Enclaves Project, 1D, 1F, and Tech Hubs will be integral to this growth strategy. We will strengthen the ecosystem of financial services to enhance the catalytic role of Development Bank of Ghana, CBG, GCX, GESEL, Ghana SM, GIF, and Venture Capital Trust Fund. Launching the Mutual Prosperity Dialogue Framework to enhance the ease of doing business and crowd in significant private sector, domestic and foreign investment, first from existing companies and also a global search for new entrants. And also, Mr. Speaker, safeguarding social protection for the vulnerable. Mr. Speaker, intermediate results from our collective efforts and our resources, especially our people, indicate that we will indeed succeed. Beyond these current challenges, our economic prospects remain bright, but we must adapt quickly and address unexpected challenges ahead in order to rebuild our resilience. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, I'd like to bring attention to several critical imperatives that require our immediate and collective action. The energy sector, especially IPP power payments, remain a critical challenge. We must support the ECG to significantly improve its collection to reduce the burden the sector imposes on public finances. I'm pleased, Mr. Speaker, to announce that we have an updated energy sector recovery plan, and we must all support its implementation to bring the sector towards a sustainable path. Mr. Speaker, expenditure control has become more important to ensure that revenue shocks are efficiently managed, even as we address the systemic challenges through technology and capacity development. Government will work with state institutions to improve the sanctions outlined in the PFM Act, especially regarding off-budget commitments by MDAs. Improving non-oil domestic revenue collection cannot be overemphasized. In this vein, it is important to support the GRA to enhance collection and operationalize measures to strengthen revenue administration effort. To achieve ambitious non-oil revenue target in the PCPEC of 20% revenue to GDP, enhanced commitment is required. And completing the domestic debt operation is essential to restore debt sustainability and move forward our engagement with external creditors. Mr. Speaker, this mid-year review offers us an even better opportunity to jointly work towards entrenching stability for our economy. We must seize it, Mr. Speaker. We must claim now a successful first review of the fund in September. Let us continue, Mr. Speaker, to believe in the Ghana we own. Let us have the courage to be proud about what we can and have achieved. Let us be and think positively. Let us act patriotic and stand firm. With hard work, integrity, fraternity, and mutual respect, we will stabilize and transform our economy as well as build a righteous nation, one of peace, prosperity, and freedom today and into the future. As 1 Peter 1:10 exhorts us, let us use whatever gifts we have received to serve Ghana. As faithful stewards of God's grace, let us indeed be perfectly united in mind and thought and build this great republic as in Philippians 4:8. Mr. Speaker, we are all, including myself, Mr. Speaker, including myself, have indeed been battered and bruised and broken in this past year, but we as a country held our resolve. As a resilient nation, the battle has indeed always been the Lord's. As we sit today, let us use this moment to glorify him, for he has, Mr. Speaker, rescued us. We have seen that he has recovered and restored some of our losses, and he has revived our economy. Mr. Speaker, we need to rejoice in fervent gratitude to the Lord. We must endeavor to continue to build this righteous republic, united in our resolve to transform our economy, for in speaking one language, and nothing will be impossible for us to achieve our manifest destiny of Ghana for greatness. Mr. Speaker, let me once again express my profound appreciation to this House and to all fellow Ghanaians for the support and cooperation towards stabilizing the economy. Let me assure you that the nation, under the steady hands of President Akufo-Addo, will pilot this ship of state, safety and growth. Right Honorable Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to present the Media Fiscal Review Statement to this House, and I beg indeed to submit. May God continue to bless our homeland Ghana, make her great and strong. In Kunim Yeyenga Dia. Victory is ours for all of us together indeed. God bless our homeland Ghana and make it great and strong. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I so submit.
Honorable members, guided by the statement, particularly the business statement for the week, comments on the media review of the budget statement and economic policy of the government of Ghana for this year will commence tomorrow. Tomorrow, Tuesday, 1st August 2023. I'm informed the intention is for members to use 2 days, tomorrow and tomorrow next, to make comments on the media review. If leadership are minded to say something or to guide me further, please let me know. Yes, Minority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity to guide you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have listened to our Minister responsible for finance. Mr. Speaker, I listened to him attentively, and I've also had the opportunity to review the papers, the document that he gave to us. Mr. Speaker, he said that the performance so far shows that we have turned the corner. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, the evidence and the numbers before us shows that he has rather deepened our woes. Mr. Speaker, I say this because he has said to us today that he is revising economic growth from 2.8% of GDP to 1.5% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, again, he said to us here and now that he has borrowed 5.5 billion Ghana cedis from January to June from the T-bill market. Mr. Speaker, not long ago, this same minister had informed us that he will not borrow at all in the year 2023, and that going into the remaining part of the year, he is going to borrow another 41 billion Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, aside that, the cedi depreciation we are seeing so far is largely because he has defaulted in the payment of external interest and principal. Mr. Speaker, that is why the cedi has...
Honorable Leader, I think we will just have to... Leader, I think you are ready to fire on, so we can just start the comments now. We can start the comment now. Leadership, is that what the decision is?
Mr. Speaker, I'm only laying foundation. I'm only laying the foundation for the debate to start tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, I will move for the suspension of the House. But in doing so, let our minister not say this anywhere that he has turned the corner. He has rather deepened our woes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, I take it that the motion has been moved. Any seconder? Well, that's the motion. I want to listen to leadership before I come to the minister. Minister, let me listen to Majority Leader.
Yes. The minister needed to table the presentation. That is what he just did.
I can't hear you.
I'm saying, after the presentation, the minister needed to table what presentation that he had done to the House, and which is what he just did. Mr. Speaker,
he needed to do what?
Table the paper.
Table the statement.
The statement that he delivered after the event. He needed to leave the House with a copy. So he needed to lay it, which is what he just did. That's the point. The Speaker, I guess you educate
now. Now you are introducing complications. If you are going to lay, is laying it as a paper, as what? Because it's a statement, and he did state that it was a statement in the terms of the Public Financial Management Act. Now, in that situation, do we lay it? Do we table it? If you lay it and you table it, what are the implications? Well, usually statements, we don't lay statements, we don't table them.
The Speaker, this is a very important statement on which we are going to comment. You cannot say that after he's read it, he should put it under his armpit and leave this House. With the greatest respect. He leaves a copy with us for purposes of reference. The Speaker, that is what it is. And that is why I'm saying that after he finished, the next thing was for him to have just presented the paper to us. The Speaker, that's all that I said.
Yes, I heard you, but you know that he did state clearly and call on the Hansard office to capture the entirety of the statement. That becomes public document. And I'm just looking at our practice so that we don't complicate matters. Yes, I see you itching to say something.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, even though in the beginning he called on the Hansard office to capture it, where did they go for the records to capture? If he doesn't lay it, there's really no basis for what they are going to capture. Because if you read a copy which some leaders got, it is obvious that he skipped some details. And so he needs to lay what is the original document that he was reading, but skipped some portions and left some details so that the Hansard office can capture the entire of it. So I do believe that even though it is a statement, that in this instance, he should actually lay the entire document so that it will be part of the records.
I understand the import of that. I'm looking at our practice and procedure. That's what I'm looking at. If it comes under Order 70, it's clear. If it is under Order 74, 75, then we know what to do. You know, those things are stated there. So I don't want people to leave here a bit confused about what next to be done. You want to clarify it? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, even though you ruled on the fact that this is a statement, I'm just going back to it, giving the reference that he's going to lay it, and the question of whether it should be laid or not has risen. Mr. Speaker, I also heard you say we would debate it from tomorrow. We'll make comments. Oh, comments, not debate. Mr. Speaker, I suppose that laying it might not be necessary at all, because when statements are made, and we make comments, I have not seen one statement being made and then it's laid. It is a statement is made and then we comment on it. Nobody lays a statement. That's my thinking.
Colleague and friend who's been in this house for quite a while will rather lead us onto the path of righteousness. Mr. Speaker, whenever reviews are made which do not include supplementary budgets, they are laid on the table for us. The Speaker, as my colleague from Koku Central has indicated, it is not possible with such documents to read the entirety of the document. Certainly you may skip some. And if you don't even leave it, assume you even read everything, the Hansard department may not be able to capture everything. For purposes of doubly checking, assume you even read everything, it's important that we have a copy with us to serve as a benchmark. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't see why we should be litigating this matter. It's by convention and practice. That is what we've been doing, with the greater respect. But having said so, Mr. Speaker, you asked for an indication. And my colleague, the minority leader, who at the very outset was indulging the finance minister to move a motion outside what is required to be done by the minister, now wants to begin his own debate. Again, outside the arrangement that we have made in this house. He was part of the business committee that agreed that we will stand the debate down, even though it's a statement, for at least 24 hours. For at least 24 hours. And he's trying to construct a very wobbly foundation. We'll not go into that. Mr. Speaker, the indication to you as you sought is that we take a suspension for now. And as we agreed last Friday, maybe for about 30 minutes, and come back to continue with the business of the day. Mr. Speaker, so if he moved a motion, I'm not too sure that he moved a motion because the time is past 2 o'clock. So we just wanted an indication from us. So I want to support the indication that eventually he gave, even though he was on the wrong course at the very outset. Mr. Speaker, the second stage of his submission is what I'm supporting. He take a suspension for 30 minutes and come back. Mr. Speaker, I thank you very much.
Honorable members. Yes. Honorable Cletus Avoka.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I think that we should distinguish between the statement that members make on the floor of this House and this mid-year fiscal policy review statement. That being so, this is a very, very official statement in respect of the government's economic policy for the mid-year. I think that for the avoidance of doubt, it will be prudent for us to lay it, so that it will be prudent for us to lay the statement read by the minister, so that members can officially access it and then contribute to the debate. I will prefer that than, not today, I'm not saying today, yes, but I'm raising the issue, I'm contributing to the issue of whether it should be late or not, and not the other way. So I will prevail upon you, Mr. Speaker, to lay the document, and then it will be assessed by this House so that we can do the debate, rather than treat it like any other ordinary statement that are passed through this House. Thank you.
Honorable member, a very senior member of this House, you are aware that media reviews used to be moved as motions and debated. That used to be the practice. They used to be moved as motions and debated by the House. 2016, you passed a new law, Public Financial Management Act, which changed the practice, and they are now presented as statements. Now, if you present it as a statement, it comes under Order 72. If you want to lay it, then you have to present it as a paper, and that comes under Order 75. So the procedures are different. And procedure for laying is that sufficient copies should have been submitted to the office of the clerk. On receipt of sufficient copies, the clerk will indicate that it be captured on the order paper. This is what is stated there. And it will have to be laid as papers for presentation, that is at the commencement of public business. But this one came under private business, which is what? Members, including ministers, statements, and that is under Order 72. That is why I said you need to clarify the situation. We are masters of our own rules, and so we are not bound to follow what we have. But definitely there should be some clarity. We should state a good precedent set, and then we can follow it tomorrow. Not to keep on changing whatever we do on this floor. That is why I raise it. Now, the sense of the House is that because of the importance attached to the statement, it should be laid and copies made available to all members, including the office of the journal. And so I direct that the Minister for Finance will lay the paper, and then copies will be made available to all members, including the office of the journals. So, Honorable Minister for Finance, we take it that you have accordingly laid the statement, and copies will be made available to all members. Now, the motion was moved for us to suspend sitting and then come back. So before we do that, I want to, on behalf of all members, thank the Minister for coming to the House, appearing before us, and presenting the media review for the budget and economic policy of government for the 2023 financial year. I should suspend sitting for how long?
Mr. Speaker, I propose 30 minutes. 30 minutes.
Actually, the motion was for suspension. He didn't move for adjournment. He moved for suspension. You mentioned adjournment. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, the agreement was for us to suspend for 30 minutes and for members to be able to ask the ministers some questions that have already been advertised.
So we suspend for 30 minutes.
Only 30 minutes, and then we'll come back. No, members are questions. Ministers. Yes.
Sitting is accordingly suspended for 30 minutes. We want all of you to be back here within 30 minutes for other matters to be considered. There's extended sitting today. We did direct last week that there will be extended sitting from today, and provision for everything is made available. Everything, yes. Honorable members, the House and sitting is accordingly suspended.
Onua TV, Onua TV, you're gonna Onua TV, you're gonna
Diakasma bese du miensana no miensa abo ye befa na poso kakra na fe yetimi akoso na ya hwebekai se ura Julius Juma no financial and policy analyst and also tax expert or hanumu ana ekupi se kwame asante enso antie bekom na fe ya hwe na poso kakra nioma hodo a obobo so no na ya hwe babia yebetimi afa ene de omano enhwe animu se ebetimi akoso panyijima yesan emu akwa babio
enua
yanhwe microeconomic indicators a ode atutu dwan am so obobo eno dodo na aso yeni kan famfiri ho na afi yanhwe se indicators no eko okwan a ebetimi aboa yen so anase eko ne bone so na afi yanhwe mfaso de ebetimi anya free mo
yo no na me say share minister presentation or the abani share ni mu say or the media review ne beba like us the structure of the budget you know na minister MIN the indicators economy no ne fapem nyoma be ne dey measure the performance of the economy inti ana share ye GDP growth rate ne ahwe non oil real GDP ye ka say real GDP as a trend say ye value your economy na at constant prices on say oye measurement I also timi hold the price no DBR prices then SSA until all the abo to value of goods and services over a particular time now or can say real GDP real only means we are making inflation constant it ends be a measure phone bo and over 1,000 cities or chabe 1,000 to 2 days ago 800 you don't get the actual price until real GDP means GDP at constant prices, all things being equal. Obviously, limited prices is not stable. Until I know normal fact, the GDP, real GDP growth rate. We are normal non-oil. The baskets in the measuring of GDP, you know, was a Ghana, ye 2 oil, a fango. Until I know per se ye oil, so ye then increase our baskets and ye share economy no a then. Now again, you're moving on to inflation. Now we call a primary balance. No, I call gross international reserve. No, about your public debt a car buying day into so to me mind the picture of busia boa buying together. That is the current year in addition to all other years. Now if you are in the value of our economy team also that may can be say as at 2023 now a end period September. It's now 3 months to complete 2022 into the minister started and all the picture for what happened in 2022. It's not a revision to the rate. 2023, some of the targets are this in say overall real GDP grow by 2.8%. Non-oil real GDP so grow by 3%. Inflation, he was targeting 18.9%. That was 2023. How inflation has also performed. These were the figures he was obviously giving us. In terms of the macroeconomic indicators, now you share the economy anymore. And your man no share the figures now so at it because even 2022 minister target is will grow by 5.7, 5.8 in terms of real GDP and non-oil real GDP. Yentimi enya that target for obvious reasons. Not all refer to IMF any World Bank say global outlook nini na anusika semne economy global economy na nkasa no kra no enyoma enhye da grow said the year no say big enyoma best start apeke up next year and then 2025. It's nice was a minister better say the figures because we are seeing if the economy is not going to grow that big rate, why do you target or